think Tevez going to Juventus, what a coup that was for me. I mean,
on a head-to-head battle, Atletico Madrid can do more damage to Barcelona than the other way around.
Either he's really blind or he's fixing the match. I can't see it any other way.
It is an upset. You would expect Man United to go and win there.
Over $1 billion was paid in transfer fees between the clubs in Europe.
And Bayern Munich are going to be favourites for me against anybody at home in the world. The 03-04 season, actually, Olympiacos have won 8 of the last 10 domestic league campaigns, so there is only really one team in Greece, which we kind of already knew.
Because things have been pretty much decided, just as a quick glance before we go through the table, PSG is going to lock up this thing with one more point. Monaco is solidly in second place. Lille is going to be in that Champions League qualifier position, 7 points ahead of Saint Etienne. If you're a serious talent, you're going back and you're playing for Santos. You're going back to play for, like in Argentina, for River Plate or Boca Juniors, or you're going to Europe.
He looked like the Ryan Giggs of old. He was more creative than any player on the pitch. He made Mata look stupid. He made Rooney look silly.
I am your host, Joe Usello. My trusted co-host, Ben the Machine. Ben, how are you tonight?
Happy anniversary to you. Happy anniversary to you. Happy anniversary. Happy anniversary.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 41 of Low Limit Football on Low Limit Poker Radio, the 1-year anniversary of this show. I am your host, Joe Usello, and happy to bring you the happy anniversary song, or that little snippet of it, sung by my absolutely favorite a cappella singing group in the entire world. That is the Carnival Cruise Line Waiters. And joining me tonight, as always, been with me the entire year, Ben the Machine. Ben, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Joe, actually. Glad to be here for the anniversary. We're still going after a year, and just like to say thanks to everyone that's listened over this year and supported us, and hopefully we'll be doing this again next year, and it'll be even bigger and better.
Exactly. Also joining us, though he hasn't been with us for the entire year, but certainly a permanent fixture, and I had to make sure of that this week on our Twitter feed because I forgot to add him onto the feed. Rob, how are you tonight?
I'm doing great. I'm glad to be here on the show, especially for the first anniversary.
Cool, man. It's great to have you, and I couldn't believe when you told me that last night that I had to change the description, and I'm like, what are you talking about? And you're like, the Twitter feed, and I'm like, oh my God, I didn't add you to the Twitter feed. So I'm glad you pointed that out. So I did get that done within the first year. So just to let everyone know, tonight we've got a big show that I know you guys are excited about. I'm excited about. In about 5 minutes or so, we're going to be joined by Tre Atkinson, reporter for Bleacher Report. Among any other things, he's an expert in Spain, specifically on Catalan football and all things Spain and La Liga. So excited to have him on, Ben and Rob, as you guys are the two La Liga reporters for the show for the past year here. I'm sure you guys are going to be extra excited to talk to him. And then coming up sometime around 7:30, and the reason we're having him so late on this show, 7:30 Eastern, which is basically an hour and a half from now, the reason he's going to be late is because right now I'm looking at him on TV doing the Locker Room live on BeIN Sport, and that is the host of the Locker Room, Jeremy St. Louis. So it looks like we've got, I can't tell who one guy is. I haven't seen that guy before, but he's got Ian Joy on there tonight. He's got Christian Vieri, and he's got the immortal Ray Hudson, who hopefully one of these days is going to be on our show. But he'll be coming on at 7:30. As I gave you guys his bio, he is a big Man United fan. So I'm sure we're going to have plenty to talk about. He's also a big hockey fan, so I've got one or two questions for him on that. So, but Ben, let's start with you. How was this week in football for you?
In fairness, it's been quite a week, really, football-wise. I mean, the end of the transfer window. Obviously, there was a couple of international friendlies, but that wasn't really too exciting for me. I was kind of looking forward to Monday. I made sure that I finished work early and I'd done all my prep around it, so I could watch the the Switzerland-England game, and when we go through the results, I'll try and give a little bit of a match report for that, just to give a brief understanding of England actually winning the game and keeping a clean sheet. So yeah.
Definitely. One thing I forgot to add to our plan was that we were going to talk, at least give the scores from Euro, and if we can squeeze it in, hopefully squeeze in the scores from the African Cup of Nations. They're qualifying there as well. So, still some big football, even though the leagues are off this week. Still some big games being played this week. Obviously, the big win today for England. I believe Italy's playing tomorrow for myself. So, we've had some pretty good stuff. Pretty good games coming up. We had a nice friendly win for the U.S. over the Czech Republic last week. So certainly, even though the leagues are off, certainly not boring around the world. So, Rob, how about you? What do you got going on for this week?
Just football, I guess.
American?
Well, yeah. I mean, the Giants play today, so
Yep.
that should be good.
Yeah. So, and that's okay because I can't stand the Giants. So,
It's fine.
Just as a quick side note before we hit up Trey, I'm a big Cowboys fan, as you guys know, and to sit there and watch that yesterday, I was texting back and forth with my best friend down in Charlotte, and the two of us just wanted to kill ourselves. I mean, it was brutal. It was absolutely brutal, and I, at least I took a few minutes to watch a little bit of the Portugal game and a little bit of the Germany game and qualifying yesterday. But if it wasn't for that, man, I'm telling you, it was a bad day. So I'll tell you what, let's jump right into it. I was thinking about maybe doing the MLS stuff and all that stuff before Trey would come on, because I wasn't sure if he'd be around quick enough. But he's already messaged me that he's available and ready to roll. So I'm going to go ahead and effort him and see if we can get him in here. And let's see if he connects to the two of us here, or the three of us, and then we'll. And joining us now on Low Limit Football, Tre Atkinson. Trey, how are you? This is Joe Usello from Low Limit Football.
Hey guys, I'm doing well. How are y'all today?
Good. Thanks for joining us, man. This is great to have you on our 1 year anniversary. I'll introduce you to my two co-hosts. First one is Rob Rojas, who I think you've interacted with quite a bit online. Rob, how are say hello to Trey.
Hello, Trey. How are you? It's a pleasure to have you.
Hey, nice to meet you.
All right. And the other one joining us all the way from Great Britain is Ben the Machine. He's kind of our English correspondent, and previously our Spain guy that covered all Spanish football for us, but now he's turned that over to Rob. So Ben, say hello to Trey.
Nice to meet you, Trey. It's nice to have you on the show. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Ben. Glad to be here.
So Trey, again, thanks for joining us. Obviously, we're gonna bug you with a few questions, especially covering Spanish football. But tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are now. I believe you're down in the Carolinas, right?
Yes, I am right now.
Yeah. Are you in Charlotte or?
I'm actually in South Carolina. I'm in Columbia right now.
Only an hour outside. I was telling these two guys that I was texting back and forth about the Cowboys game yesterday because I'm a big football fan too. And my best friend lives in Charlotte, so I know exactly where you are. I was driving through your neck of the woods about 2 months ago. So.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, tell us how you got started. Tell us how you got hooked up with Bleacher Report, and how you got to where you're at.
Oh, sure thing. Well, I grew up absolutely in love with football, especially Spanish football. My family is actually from Spain. My great-grandfather was from Barcelona, and my great-grandmother was from Bilbao. So I'm part Basque, part Catalan, and part Native American Indian. So I have a whole bunch of interesting blood in me. But I grew up loving football and loving to write, and when I got to college, I decided that I wanted to try some freelance writing just to see how I would do with that, if I would enjoy it. And at the time, website Inside Spanish Football, which is very, very familiar at this moment. They've been growing pretty quickly. I kind of joined them as just a freelance writer who could add a little bit every now and then. And I was a fan of Bleacher Report and decided to apply for it for a writing position, and they got back to me within a week and said they'd like to take me on. And from there, I just kept working hard, writing my best, doing the very best work that I could do until they just kept bumping me up the ladder. And it's been a fun ride, but it's been a lot of hard work. I've enjoyed every second of it.
Cool. Ben, you have a question for Trey to start?
Yeah. I was just going to ask you, Trey, actually, just for the listeners to know and get a bit more of an idea of the industry you work in. How competitive an industry would you say is sports writing? Specifically your field. Just to give all the viewers and the listeners an idea of how hard it is to break into.
Sure, it's definitely a very competitive field, and like any field that you would enter into, it's all about who you know. It's not something you can just jump into and have the world at your fingers. You have to work really hard. You have to get your foot inside the door, and a lot of it just takes the willingness to be available. When I first got started with Inside Spanish Football, they were in need of regular writers, and it was a startup at the time, and I just made myself available. And the more I made myself available, the more people took notice, and the more practice I got at my trade, the more people I got to know. And then within Bleacher Report, once I started, it was all about making connections, getting to know people better, emailing people, just talking to people outside of work-related things, and building contacts and building relationships. And I think that is definitely a major part of a field like sports writing. Also, I have a lot of family back in Spain, so I have correspondents that I know in Barcelona, in Madrid, in Bilbao, and San Sebastian, and just knowing people there gets my foot in several other doors. And for a lot of people who want to go into sports writing, they may not know anyone, but that shouldn't turn them off to it. It's up to you to work hard to put your name out there, and to get people to take notice of you and to build those relationships. And the more you're willing to work at it, and the more you realize that you have to build connections, the more successful you can be. But it's definitely very competitive, and it's not something that's going to take off really quickly. But that kind of makes you more proud of yourself when it's something that you work hard for to achieve.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, well, we all respect, and we've read some of your writing. I do believe that Rob has got a question for you now as well, so I'll pass you on to my co-host Rob, and he's gone far away. Rob.
Yes. Hi, Trey. I guess we could go and start with the football questions, if you don't mind.
Sure thing, no problem.
Obviously, being a Catalan Basque descendant living in the United States, despite the fact of that, how did it feel to be a World Cup champion 4 years ago for Spain, despite the fact that a lot of Catalan and Basque country supporters want independence? But still, how did it feel to become a world champion for that country?
Well, that's a question I get asked quite a bit, and I feel like most Catalans and Basques get asked that several times during football season, and it's a tough one to answer, really, because if it were up to me, I would absolutely love to see a Catalan national team or a Basque national team in a World Cup. If that were to happen, I'd probably cry immediately just because of the significance that would hold. But that's not possible right now. There was actually some push later in last year where the Basque Football Federation is trying to push for the chance to play in international tournaments, even though Spain are in some of those tournaments. And it's unlikely that they'll win any type of appeal for that, but they are pushing. They want to play their own games, and the Basque and Catalan national teams play one friendly a year around Christmas, and they want to play more. But since that's not available right now, Spain is kind of their outlet, and there are several people, many fans across both of those independent areas that do not support the Spanish national team. I had a friend from Georgia who I met in college, and he said he was actually in Barcelona the day after the World Cup was won, and he said he was very shocked because half of the people were celebrating and half of the people were kind of picketing against it, and they didn't want celebrations, and he, not knowing the culture, had no idea what was going on. And I think it all comes down to a person's personal feelings towards that. To me, I don't dislike Spain. I don't hate Spain, to put it that way. There's definitely a lot of problems there, and I know several Spaniards who wish that relations between the three groups and the Galicians as well was much better. And then I know some Spaniards who call me names on Twitter and Facebook and all other things just for being Catalan Basque. But the majority of people you meet, they don't want all the problems. They want the problems to go away. They want respect and unity between all the people groups in Spain. And for right now, when someone like Javier Martinez or Ander Iturraspe or Gerard Piqué or Xavi, whenever they put on the Spain jersey, in a sense, they are playing for Catalonia and for the Basque country because that's the only way they can. When they put on that Spain jersey, whether people like it or not, Catalonia, the Basque country, the Galicians, they are part of Spain, and that jersey represents them as well. So the way I kind of see it is until we do have our own teams that can play in tournaments like that, then Spain, in a way, represents us. And so when Spain won the World Cup back in 2010, I was very proud. I was happy to see players like Fernando Llorente and Xavi and Piqué and Puyol be able to lift the World Cup trophy, because when they lifted that, it was not just for Spain. It was for Catalans and Basques and all the people's groups in Spain. And it was a very proud moment that I think we should be able to be proud of instead of angry about it, because though there's a lot of problems in the country and a lot of disrespect between people groups, you'll see players, whether they're regular Spaniards or Catalans or whoever, that they're proud to play alongside each other. And I think if the players can put those differences aside and can wear a shirt together and support their own area of Spain, then fans and people of different people groups should be able to be proud of it as well.
Okay. Sounds about right.
Ben, go ahead. You had another question for Trey?
Yeah, Trey, whilst we're on the subject of international football, obviously the World Cup's just finished. I just wondered if you could tell me what your thoughts were of Spain and America, actually, in the past World Cup, and what you think's in store for both countries going forward.
Absolutely. To be completely honest, I was not surprised about Spain's run in the World Cup. Going into it, I felt that Vicente del Bosque was not willing to make changes. He kind of had the idea of his team in his head from 4 years ago. He had made a couple adjustments here or there, but it seemed that he wanted to try to keep winning with a proven method, but was unwilling to adapt. After players like Gerard Piqué have had bad years, I think seeing them in the starting lineup just proved that Del Bosque was going to try to stick with what he knew rather than making changes. Players like Xavi, even though he's a legend, he just wasn't ready for games like that. And also throwing Diego Costa into the mix, who had never actually played a game with Spain, and who was also injured going into the World Cup. I felt that there wasn't enough willingness to change. It was clear that Spain's defense was horrendous, and I wasn't surprised that matches ended that way. I mean, I expected Spain to get out of the group, but the way that they performed was not surprising, because so many of these players, nearly the entire team, were dead tired after such a long season. They had been in and out of international games. The more success that you have, the more you have to play, the more you have to put on the line. And I think a lot of these players, they were just done. They were mentally, physically, emotionally tired. The system wasn't what it used to be, and it was just time for them to hit the wall. But looking forward, I'm very excited, because I believe Del Bosque now realizes that he has to make changes. Players like Xavi, Iker Casillas, and others, it's clear that they can't continue to lead the team, that there have to be fresh players. And in my personal opinion, Spain is one of the deepest countries when it comes to youth talent. Players like Koke and David De Gea, Iker Muniain, others deserve a shot at the team. And I think the more he brings in young talent, the more Spain is going to achieve, because you mix in that winning culture, that mindset of wanting to continue success, and you mix in the hunger of young, successful, talented players, and it's a recipe to reach great heights, and I'm very excited about that going forward.
Now, Trey, I have a question for you. You stole a little bit of my thunder with your previous answer, because I was going to ask you. Obviously, Spain has gone through a golden age of football here, where 2 Euro trophies, a World Cup. Certainly one of the greatest teams to ever set foot on the pitch. Do you feel that their golden age is over per se, or do you feel that the youth that we see coming up through the ranks, like Koke, like David De Gea, and those guys that you just mentioned, do you feel that those guys are enough quality to carry this and really just make it a transition as opposed to the end of a golden age?
Yeah, it's a tough question to answer because you never know how young players are going to turn out. But I think just looking at the quality of the young players in Spain, I definitely think that the golden age is not over yet. I think it can continue for a long time based on how many young, talented players there are. Today, for instance, in Spain's 5-1 win, Munir El Haddadi from Barcelona debuted today. He just turned 19 a couple of days ago. Paco Alcacer at 21 debuted and scored a brilliant goal. And these are players who possibly wouldn't even be in the top 5, top 7 discussions for their position in the team. I mean, the talent level, the depth is just ridiculous. At the same time, that there are other countries who have brilliant talent at such young ages. I mean, looking at Germany, the amount of young players they have coming through is just as impressive as Spain. And to say that one country has the most youth talent is a claim that nobody can really make, because you can look at young players and say they're talented, but the way they develop as players, the way they mature and become professionals is really unpredictable. But just based off of having watched the players, having seen them and covering them, I do think the golden era is continuing, and this is just kind of a lull while there's a transition into new players. But I would not be surprised at the next World Cup the next year to see Spain challenging at a very high level if Del Bosque and the management are willing to give these young players a chance and let them carry the team.
Thanks, Trey. I know both Rob and Ben want to ask you a question about the USA. I'm going to let them two fight it out and then let them pop the question to you.
Sure thing.
Go ahead, Rob.
All right. In the last 6 years or so, the Spanish national team has been given success due in fact because of La Masia in Barcelona and the Real Madrid Academy and Atletico Madrid Bilbao. What do you think should happen in the United States so that they can, I guess, I wouldn't want to say replicate, but at least get to the success that the other countries have, like Brazil, Argentina, Germany, etc., to challenge to even be considered one of the world's best, if not go for the World Cup? What should happen to the academies?
Absolutely. This is actually a conversation a couple of friends and I were having the other day, and it has to be approached in a different way in the U.S. because you get on a plane in America, you fly to another country, almost any other country, when you walk off the plane and you step foot in their country, football is what they live, they eat, they breathe. And because of that, there's so much attention given to the sport. The reason that we have, 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old kids who are world-known names in other countries is because that's the sport. That is what the entire country is focused on. So every kid is kicking a ball around. Almost every kid is trying to get into an academy, or they at least follow the sport at some level. In America, that luxury is not there. In America, football or soccer is fighting really to be one of the top 5 sports. I mean, right now with the NFL and college football, basketball, baseball, even hockey is getting bigger over here. There's so many other sports that have precedence over it. And right now, you have kids who will go to basketball camps and baseball camps and football camps, and they'll play the sports year-round. And soccer is kind of seen as not anywhere near as important. And as long as it stays that way, I don't think that success can be achieved. I think the mindset and the idea of football has to change in America. And I think it's starting to with the World Cup and how much success we found. But I really love what Jurgen Klinsmann has done recently. He's looked at America and realized that the depth pool, the amount of talent coming through is not on the same level as other countries, and he's right about that. So what he's done is he's looked elsewhere to players who are growing as players in another country, like Julian Green, who has been in Germany nearly all of his life because he is an American in another country, but he's in a country where his focus is football. And so he's bringing in players like Julian Green, like Darlington, like other players from around in Germany. And I think that's a brilliant idea because he recognizes that these players are getting the training that they need, whether they're in America or not, and they qualify to play for America, and they're proud to wear the jersey. But I think it needs to start there because the way the U.S. is, you really have to be successful to get a backing. And I think the better the United States men's national team gets, the more that football culture, that idea of soccer will change in the country. And that has to change first before we can look at major academies in America. Because, you think of any really talented young American player, they're not going to stay in America to play because they want to grow as a player. Like Barcelona just took on their first American player, I think 2 years ago, maybe 3. He was a 14-year-old because the player realized and his family realized that if he wanted to be serious about his football career, he needed to go to a European country, a South American country. And the U.S. has to change their mindset. We have to change the focus if we want to be on the same level as other countries. But Klinsmann's being smart and realizing that he has to look elsewhere to bring success to change that mindset.
Trey, while we're talking about the grassroots level, actually for the United States, they impressed me quite a lot at the World Cup, but I kind of wanted your opinion on it. What did you think of the United States at the World Cup that's just passed? And what do you think, we spoke a little bit about the youth there, but what do you think is in store for fans of the American national team going forward? Do you think they progress? Can they be a force for you?
I definitely think that they can continue to improve. I wrote an article recently after the World Cup that said, give it two more World Cups and the U.S. could possibly be a contender based on how quickly they are progressing. I, for one, was very impressed with how the U.S. men's national team played in the World Cup. I do think they got lucky in several occasions. The match against Portugal, for instance, even though Ronaldo's late assist at the end of the game gave Portugal the draw, and America was leading up to that point, I do think that there were several times where Portugal could have taken a lead. The match against Ghana, I think that Ghana possibly should have won that game. They did everything but put the ball in the back of the net. So I think America got off lucky on a couple of occasions. They won games and got results that I think that they fought very hard for, although it could have went another way. But regardless, the spirit they showed, the fight that they had, they refused to quit in any game. And I was very proud of that. And I think that Americans should be proud of how they performed. And I know several people who, after the Belgium game, they were just like, oh, well, America's out. No need to care about it anymore. And I was trying to push them in the direction of, no, be proud that they made it this far. This was one of the groups of death, and America got out of it. And, playing Belgium was never going to be an easy game, as strong as Belgium is. And, although that match could have been a lot worse if not for Tim Howard, but America played really well. They showed that they have talent. The likes of Julian Green, for instance, was phenomenal. And there's more young talent waiting in the wings. There's more players who are close to getting citizenship to be able to play for America. And if they continue in this way, if Jurgen Klinsmann continues to push them in the right direction, I don't see any reason why they can't continue to grow. I'm not willing to say that they're going to be a title contender or a World Cup contender in the next few years, but they're heading in the right direction, and that needs to be celebrated.
Thank you for your reply.
Just to add, Trey, I put it up in our Skype chat that you can see, and we also have an interactive chat on the website. So we have a couple of guests in the chat there. The player you were referring to at La Masia is Ben Letterman, who was a California kid whose family moved him out to Spain because he was going to be training at La Masia. So I'm in agreement with you about a lot of that development. Like the Julian Greens, kids being immersed in the football culture overseas. I agree with that. Just one quick follow-up question that I want to ask you about your opinion on the United States. A lot has been made of Jurgen Klinsmann putting a German influence in on this U.S. team and the U.S. program in general. There was an assistant coach, and his name is escaping me, but he was basically fired by Jurgen, and that was the coach that kind of had that Latin influence. In my opinion, I think the best solution to the American style or the American focus would be a combination of the tactically sound German style along with the Latin flair and creativity. I just want your opinion on is Klinsmann leading them down the right track overall in terms of their type and style of play, making it a little more pro-German, or should he influence other cultures and kind of develop a quote-unquote American style?
Yeah, I believe that America needs to work quickly to find their style or how they want to play. I think there's not really a lot of time or a lot of room to try to incorporate different ideas and different styles of play because the way that America is progressing right now, people are starting to expect more success. And it's time for America under Jurgen Klinsmann to make the decision, how are we going to play? And when he gets a lot of these new players in, he's going to have to tweak some things. But I like the way that they played at the World Cup. I think their German mindset of being very tactically aware and positioning was a very wise choice. I personally would like to see some more flair into their game. But I think one of the reasons that that's not quite there right now is they just don't have the players for it. You're not going to see Clint Dempsey dribbling through 10 players and backheeling it to someone. That's just not the talent that's on the team. The type of players on this American team are players who can pass well, they can defend, they can get in the right position, and they can work hard. You don't really have flair-type players, other than, again, the likes of Julian Green, who showed that he has a little bit of touch to him. But with the upcoming players that they have, like Darwin Nagbe, he has incredible feet and the ability with the ball. And I think when these players start coming in who actually have some flair to them, and that's the way that they like to play, I think he can start adding in more of that flair. But for the players they have now, I think Klinsmann is wise in the sense that he needs to get something solidified going forward instead of still questioning how does America play. And I think that includes figuring out what type of formation he's going to use. We've seen a 4-2-3-1. We've seen a 3-4-2-1. We've seen several different lineups from him. We've seen a Christmas tree lineup, and I think he's trying to stretch himself too thin there. He needs to figure out how America wants to play and start training that way and playing that way, and stop trying to figure out. I think it should be figured out by this point, but we'll see what happens when more faces enter this team and they have to accommodate those players.
No, sounds great. I was always concerned that maybe, like you said, he should kind of find the American style, and I think it's going to be a combination of all of these other types of players and their playing styles. But I also think that the kids going from here over to Europe to get into these clubs and get into these schools like La Masia is definitely nothing but positive for the U.S. soccer scene in general. So I'm gonna pull you away from Spain in general now, and I'm gonna get you into La Liga with a bunch of questions because I know we're all chomping at the bit on these. And I'm gonna kick us off at Barcelona. Obviously the big acquisition for Barca this year was Luis Suarez. Despite the fact that he's going to have to wait until sometime towards the end of October to actually see the pitch in a meaningful game for Barcelona, my question to you is kind of twofold. Is waiting for Luis Suarez worth it for Barcelona? And two, can Barca stay near or at the top to make the Suarez acquisition effective for them moving forward in La Liga?
To answer both questions, I think the answer is definitely yes. They paid a whole lot of money for Luis Suarez. They're going to have to wait several months for him to be available. But when he is available, we all know what type of player he is. He has that South American style to him that Messi and Neymar both have. He not only can score goals, but he can assist, which makes him an incredible addition to the team because other than Messi scoring and creating, Barcelona's not had any of that really. And everyone thought last year that Neymar was going to be that second option that took the pressure off of Messi, but Neymar hasn't yet to really pan out the way people expected. And Luis Suarez has proven himself in Europe. He's not coming into a situation where people are wondering if he's going to work out or they're wondering how he's going to be in this country. I mean, he's established himself as one of the very best strikers in the game, if not the best pure striker playing right now. And he is going to have to wait for a while, but since his ban was altered and he's allowed to at least train with his teammates and just the raw talent that he has, I think that it's going to be worth it in the long run because when Barcelona gets him back, man, they're adding one of the top 5, top 3 players in the world to their team, which is already stacked. It was a lot of money, but with the transfer ban on Barcelona in the next couple of years, I think they had to make some moves like this, and they get him late, but I think Barcelona fans would rather get him late than not get him at all. And I do think that they can hold off and they can be successful waiting for him because they have players like Neymar, they have Pedro and Munir El Haddadi, who's been playing with the first team for a while now. They have talented players to help them. I don't think they're going to be as successful as they could if Suarez was here for sure. But I think they'll be all right. They'll still be in the title race just because of how La Liga is played. Most of the people that they meet that they will have the upper hand with without playing someone like Suarez. They'll be able to get by. They probably won't be at the top of the table when they get Suarez back, but they'll still be in it. They'll probably be playing pretty decently in the Champions League. And I think really when Suarez is available, he'll be coming in at the right time when Barcelona really need that extra push.
Okay. As a follow-up question, because with Barca, it was pretty well known that they were pretty suspect in defense. Do you think they did enough in this transfer window, especially given that they're going to have the transfer ban coming up? Did they do enough to solidify that defense moving forward?
Honestly, I don't think they did. Bringing in Jeremy Mathieu was a brilliant move. A lot of fans wanted a big name. They wanted a Marquinhos, a Thiago Silva. They were kind of ignoring the fact that Barcelona needed a specific type of defender. They needed someone who was strong, who was very, very fast, and who could make tackles one-on-one. And that's exactly what Jeremy Mathieu does. That's what he's done at Valencia during his entire career. Elsewhere, he's a fast center back who used to play left back. He can pass the ball very well. He can make tackles. He's exactly what they needed. That being said, he's not a world-class defender in that sense. He's not one of the top center backs in the world, and neither is Thomas Vermaelen, who they brought in after him. Vermaelen has great character. The leader, he's great defending in the air, which Barcelona has needed for some time now. But neither one of them are what we would call world-class, stand out above the rest center backs. They added 2 very good players who are going to help the team, but I don't think the defense improved enough. It did improve, but not what they needed. I think it will definitely be better this year, but there's still some answers there, and there's some tactical answers too with Luis Enrique of how much he's going to let Jordi Alba and Dani Alves venture forward, because as long as those two are both running down the wings at the same time, it's really hard to stop goals from coming in when you only really have 2 defenders at the back. So I think tactically it needs to be looked at first, and then you can kind of look at what you need to do with the defense. And I believe players like Marc Bartra definitely need to have more playing time. They should be one of the focal points just because of their talent, their potential, and the hunger they have now. Luckily, with the transfer ban, there are young, talented defenders waiting in the wings, like Frank Bagnac and Edgar Ley, or EA, however you want to pronounce it, at Barcelona B, Alex Quintilla and Rodrigo Terran at younger levels for Barcelona. So I think they have players coming up through the system who are going to help them. But speaking as someone who really, really favors Barcelona and has a soft spot for them in his heart, being Catalan, I would have liked to have seen them make a bigger move at defense. Mathieu was great. Vermaelen is a decent pickup, but I think they were missing that one defender that made everybody say, okay, the defense is better. But we'll have to wait and see how Luis Enrique does with them.
Okay. So, Rob, go ahead. I know you have another question.
Yes, I do. Trey, last season, Barcelona had their worst season in terms of silverware won since 2007-2008. What do you think happened at Barcelona that made people, and I guess most fans, doubt about the team, how it's probably changing because post-Pep, Guardiola, and situation like that, even despite the fact they were stacked, even with the transfer of Neymar? Like, what changed over there in Catalonia that last season?
I think a lot of it is when Pep left, and a lot of people want to put this on the fact that he left, that the team was changing. But let's not forget, Pep's last season was a very, very weak season for Barcelona. Had several poor showings. I think when Pep Guardiola left, he did because he realized that there was going to be a transition. You can't stay the very best there is for long because times are changing, players are changing, they're aging, new players are coming up. There has to be a transition. And I think if I had to make a statement of what the biggest issue was, it and the board's unwilling to adapt. We went, summer after summer without the club willingness really making big signings that they needed to. Xavi was aging. They brought back Fabregas, who was never going to be his replacement, as a different type of player. Players like Thiago Alcantara wanted to leave because he wasn't getting playing time, and they proceeded to play Xavi more, even though he was aging, and they lost out on Thiago. They never really brought in any defenders. It looked like a team stuck in time. It was a team trying to live off of the glory of their 6-trophy year, their 3-trophy year, rather than actually looking at where they were and where they were going. I think they had too much of their focus on the past and wanted to keep the same players, the same group together, refusing to accept that the players were aging. Times were changing. Other teams were improving, and Barcelona were kind of standing still. And once Pep left, that was such a big influence that left there. And Tito Villanova, prayers still go out to his family for his passing. I was a big fan of Tito Villanova. He wasn't quite the leader that Pep was, and with his cancer battle, he wasn't able to be there as much as a coach needed to. Tata Martino, I think, was a terrible signing. I think Luis Enrique should have been signed last year or someone else. And I think the team they were still treading water. They were trying to bring in a manager and let the team stay the same, and they needed to change things. And I think Luis Enrique has done a good job of changing that. They brought in several new faces this year, 2 keepers, 2 defenders, midfielders, forwards. They've, for lack of a better word, they've revamped the team this year, and I think that's what the team has been missing for a while. And for them to be treading water for so long, it was kind of impossible for them to win the trophies that fans were expecting to win because they weren't doing the things necessary to challenge. We had teams like Real Madrid who were going out and purchasing players like Luka Modric and Gareth Bale and players like that, and Barcelona weren't. They weren't going after those players. And Bayern Munich were going out and getting Javi Martinez and players like this season, Lewandowski and Götze, and Barcelona weren't. They were just still stuck in where they were, and you can't improve if you're standing still. And I think that was the biggest issue, really.
Just as a follow-up as well, talking about Barcelona, why do you think Pep Guardiola left Barcelona, despite the success that he's won?
I think it comes down to a couple of several things, and to be honest, I don't think we're ever really going to know the reason why he left. I think it was a mixture of the fact that he realized that the team was about to go through a transition. He knew that changes were going to have to be made, tough decisions were going to have to be made. And possibly he felt like because of that, his time at the club was up. He was always the type of manager who said that he believes managers go in cycles, and he thought his cycle at Barcelona was done. There's also rumors upon rumors of a falling out with the board, that crazy things were constantly happening with the board and him, and possibly he got tired of all of the decisions they were trying to make and the things they were trying to force on him. And I think Pep wanted to test himself. Everybody was talking about how great of a coach he was and how he was the next big thing and one of the best managers in the game, even though he had only been coaching for 3-4 years professionally. And I think he saw that maybe he needed to test himself somewhere else. He had to prove himself, and that's why he chose to go to Bayern Munich. And I think it's a lot of that together, but I don't think that was really one reason. I think more than anything else, Pep just felt like it was the right decision. He felt like he just had to go at that time, and the club handled it really well with the goodbye ceremony and the players telling him goodbye and him talking to the entire camp now through a microphone. And I think everybody was in agreement that just this chapter was over, for whatever reason it was, and now you have to look ahead. I was sad to see Pep go. I'd love to see him come back one day, as I'm sure any Barcelona fan would say, but I don't think we'll ever know why. I think he just felt that was what he was supposed to do.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Trey, I just got one last question for you on Barcelona before we move on. What are your expectations for Barcelona this year? And kind of a two-part question. And what would they be next year when Suarez is available from the first game?
Well, for this season, I think the first thing they have to achieve, and their goal needs to be winning a championship, winning a major title, whether that's La Liga or Champions League. Most people do not count the Copa del Rey as a major title. I think for this year to be a success, they have to win something. And I think they have to make the decision, do they want to make the major push for the Champions League or do they want to make the major push for La Liga? I think focusing on the domestic campaign would probably be the best decision at this point. So I see them challenging really heavily in La Liga. I'm not sure if they have everything necessary to win the league, but I definitely think they'll be there. Champions League, I just can't see them winning the Champions League this year with the strength of clubs like Bayern Munich and Real Madrid, but I definitely think they'll be fighting in that as well, maybe a Final Four appearance, if you will. They'll probably have a deep run in the Copa del Rey. If they and Real Madrid are on different sides of the table, we could likely see an El Clasico final for that, but I think they're going to do their best work in La Liga. That needs to be their focus, and possibly they could end the season with a trophy there. But looking forward to next season, with the transfer ban, the distractions of the summer will kind of be gone, which could be a good thing. Luis Suarez is there to train. Neymar's there to train. Other players who have been there for a year now will have their spots, and I think we can see a much, much better Barcelona next season, which is why this season needs to go well for them to build on it. Next season, I could see them fighting for a Champions League and a league at the same time because of players or because the fact that players will now be adjusted. They'll be familiar with where they are. But this season, I just can't see 2 trophies or challenging for 2 trophies. But it's going to be better next year, even though there's a transfer ban. They will be better next season because they will be able to incorporate young players and keep it tight, keep a kind of family atmosphere there because the distractions of the summer transfer window won't be there. They don't have to worry about all the rumors and the talks and what's going on. They can just focus on training and getting better.
Thank you for answering that question. I believe Rob has a question for you about Bilbao.
Yes, I do. Trey, how do you think? What are your expectations for Athletic Bilbao this season, especially given the fact that I don't want to say I was surprised, but I was really intrigued when I heard that they did beat Napoli in the Champions League playoff round. And what are your expectations for not only just the Champions League, but as well as the league? How do you see them doing this season?
Absolutely. I'm very hopeful that my Athletic can have another top 4 finish. I would actually be surprised if they didn't finish in the top 4. I would be. It would feel like a dream or nightmare if they didn't finish in the European zone. I just can't see that possibly happening at all. They have to finish in the European zone, and I think a 4th place aim is absolutely achievable. I do think they are the 4th best team in Spain. Sevilla are still really good. Valencia have improved. But I just don't think either one of those two, Villarreal or Real Sociedad, either are just at the level of Athletic. And because of that, I think they can finish 4th. The Champions League is going to take some of that focus away, as it should. This is the first time they've been in the Champions League in 16 years. And they need to live it up. They need to be excited. Fans are very excited because of what this means. And most people were surprised that Athletic were able to beat Napoli. I was not one of those people. I believed the entire time that they could. I didn't think they were favorites, but I thought they could win it just because I've watched this team play every game every season, and I know the drive and the desire they have and the way that they play, and I knew it was possible. Last year they only lost 2 games at the San Mamés, and neither one of those were to Barcelona or Real Madrid. They played those 2 juggernauts heads up, and they showed that they can stand toe-to-toe with big teams. They might not can do it on a week-in, week-out basis, but they can stand up to the bigger teams and give them a fight. So when they beat Napoli, it was just a night of celebration. You could see it at the San Mamés and in the streets. The fans were just going crazy because they had waited so long for this. And the team, contrary to what some people say, is extremely talented, very deep. They are, I would say, more of a family than almost any other club in the world just because of the way the club is run. And they know how to play together. They've grown up together. This is a team of brothers, and they want to fight. They want to put everything they have on the field and leave it all there. And I definitely think that a 4th place finish is likely and should be the goal. I even believe they can win their Champions League group. And if they don't, 2nd place finish would be great as well. But I believe they could top their Champions League group, with Porto being their biggest rival. But I think that Porto is a step down from Napoli. And if Athletic can topple Napoli, they can topple Porto. And it's going to be a very exciting year. I can see them maybe getting out of their group, maybe going one step further, possibly. 4th place finish in the league, a strong run in the Copa del Rey. It would be great to see them get back to a final in that, but we'd have to wait and see how the brackets are before we can start talking about a Copa del Rey final. But it's going to be a great year. It's going to be successful. Losing Ander Herrera was really bad for the team, but not many people knew about the other talent that was waiting in the likes of Unai Lopez and Agarakeche, who are ready. I've always said that Unai Lopez was going to be better than Ander Herrera. That Inigo Ruiz de Galarreta, who is on loan at Zaragoza, could be the next Ander Herrera. That just the way the club is run, there's players waiting to take other players' positions if they're given the chance all over the youth level. And when Ander Herrera left, it was hard. He had told the fans over and over again, he had called for press conferences to specifically say he wasn't leaving, and then he left. And the fans, they were very upset about it. They felt lied to. But as soon as he announced that he was gone, the fans said, okay, bring up the next kid. We're ready for him. And Unai Lopez has been incredible. Beñat really well. And it's just like when the club lost Fernando Llorente and Javi Martinez, other players stepped up and they were ready to play. Athletic may lose players here and there, but they always have somebody ready to take their place. So being able to continue their success without Herrera is not a surprise to me. I think it's going to be a very good year, and Ernesto Valverde is going to show that he is a very good manager, and he can continue to find success with this club.
Yeah, it should be quite an interesting season. Also, a follow-up about Athletic Bilbao. Obviously, given myself, I love South American football. I follow it a lot, constantly. And the question that does intrigue me, how much of an influence has Marcelo Bielsa played at Athletic Bilbao as a manager? despite even with Pep Guardiola even saying that he was the best manager in the world in 2012. Like, how much of an influence and impact has he made at Bilbao during his tenure?
He definitely left an impression, that's for sure. Fans still admire El Loco. They still wear T-shirts with his face on it. He will always be loved in the city of Bilbao because of what he achieved. And not many people realize this, but his style of play is a very Basque type style of play. The Basques love to press. They love to constantly be running. They love to use their physicality and play really hard, tough football. They like crossing the ball. They like trying to get the ball in the goal in any way possible. And his insane style of constantly running and pressing fit Basque football, and that's why the fans took to it so well, and the players took to it. Also, Bielsa's been a very big proponent of using players who can play multiple positions. He likes players who can play in more than one spot on the pitch. And at La Cantera Lezama, which is the youth academy at Athletic, they teach players how to play more than one position. They teach them how to be a well-rounded footballer, rather than saying, well, you're a striker, so you're going to continue to play striker, or you're a defender, so you'll continue to train in defense. They train them where they can play multiple positions, and you can see that in players today. Munyain can play on the wings, in behind the striker. Iturraspe can play as a holding midfielder, a defensive midfielder, a defender. Oscar De Marcos has played a striker, winger, a number 10, a holding midfielder, a right back, a left back. Players they're taught to play multiple positions, and Bielsa fit that. And he brought such success to the club that fans will never forget him. His influence is still felt. I think fans are starting to get past their love of Bielsa because of what Valverde has been able to do. Bielsa took them to 2 finals, but Valverde took them to the Champions League. And because Valverde was a player at Athletic during his career, he played there. He loves the city. He was raised there really when his family moved. He's a part of that family, and so I think that the love for Bielsa is still there, but the club is very thankful to have Valverde, and they're really excited about what he's going to bring. But there will always be a special place for El Loco in Bilbao, and he's always going to be in the hearts of the fans there.
Yeah, I do agree with that. He obviously a underrated manager and a cult hero by many clubs, and not just clubs, nations around the world.
So, Rob, Rob, I think you wanted to lead us into some Real Madrid questions as well.
Yes, I do. I do have one question about Real Madrid. What do you think contributed to the La Decima and winning the Copa del Rey? What do you think happened in Real Madrid, and how it took so long to win La Decima, even during the Galacticos era with Beckham, Ronaldo, Zidane, Figo, etc.? What changed in that one season when Ancelotti came in?
I think several things changed. Beginning with the Galacticos idea of bringing in at least one world-class player every year sounds like a very amazing thing to do on paper, but it doesn't always work that way. You can take a great player and put him on a club with other great players. It doesn't mean they're going to play well together. The team was too focused on trying to get world-class players that they weren't as focused on trying to get the right players. And that happened year after year, that they just weren't putting the right pieces together. They were more focused on the name rather than what that player contributed to the squad that was already there. So I think it was hard for them to win because they were facing teams who were built to succeed with the players they had. And a team like Barcelona, who have won several titles over the last couple of years, they would bring in players and promote players who fit their system specifically, whether or not they were a big name. Whereas Barcelona or Real Madrid just kind of tried to find a great player somewhere who they could bring in. I think the reason that was able to change and the reason they were able to win La Decima last year, a lot of it came down to the winning mentality that Ancelotti brought to the team. He's a proven winner, and I think he brought that with him. He was able to kind of shake off some of the Mourinho demons and get the players focused again. And also, I personally believe that playing against Atletico Madrid in the final is what won it for Real Madrid. They were playing for La Decima after all of these years of not being able to get it against their biggest rival. There was no way they were going to lose that game. So much was on the line there. There was so much that they had to face. The players would not allow a loss in that game. I do believe if Real Madrid had been playing somebody else in the final, that they possibly would not have won it, because they were playing without Xabi Alonso. Their midfield was really questionable at the time. Their defense had not been in good form, but everyone just turned up to play because it was against Atletico. I think since it was the Champions League final, they would have been ready to play regardless, but being against Atletico in that game with everything on the line, that was kind of the push over the edge that they needed. I know a lot of people were talking about how great it would be to see Atletico stand in the way of La Decima, but I was thinking the entire time, that's in Real Madrid's favor. They've had so many meetings with them lately. They know how they play. They were ready for that game, and they weren't going to lose it.
All right.
My question.
Joe,
Yeah, I got you. My question is a little bit more about the transfer window as it relates to Real Madrid. More specifically, a lot was made about how there was a loan agreement in place for Radamel Falcao to come over from Monaco. That turned into a full sale from Monaco to Manchester City, and that turned into a loan deal to Manchester United for Falcao. I just wanted your thoughts on Real Madrid losing out on Falcao, and was it a good thing or a bad thing for Real Madrid in general?
Well, I think a player like Radamel Falcao, you can never say that signing him is a bad thing. Like he would have helped the team for sure because of how good of a player he is. However, I personally do not think he was the right type of player they needed. With the likes of Cristiano Ronaldo and Gareth Bale, and even Jaime Rodriguez, Real Madrid's the type of team who need a striker who is looking to help others score first. And I think Benzema is a good fit because he can score, absolutely. He can finish off chances, but he can also set up Bale and Ronaldo and others very well for a striker. He's a very good passing striker. He can hold play up. I think adding Falcao into that mix, there would be too many players wanting to take shots and not enough shots to go around. We probably would have seen Bale's numbers drop, maybe Ronaldo's numbers drop a little bit. There would have been too many players wanting to have the ball at their feet and not allowed to. I think it would have been overcrowding. So I think missing out on him is not a big deal. The fans shouldn't feel upset about that. I don't know how much he really would have succeeded there because Benzema is such a good fit for their system. Again, like I recently said, it's all about finding the right players for the system. Falcao would have been brought in because he's a great striker, but I do not think he would fit what they were trying to do. In hindsight, Falcao joining Manchester United, great signing for the Red Devils over there, and I think Louis van Gaal is doing really good things with the English club, and I'm excited to see kind of how they progress, but Real Madrid missing out on Falcao is not really a big deal. I never really thought they were going to sign him in the first place with all the rumors going on. I didn't expect him to come. So really no harm, no foul in my opinion.
Just as kind of a hypothetical follow-up to that, I was originally going to ask you if he would have replaced Benzema, but I think it sounds like just from your answers that Benzema is the better option for the style that they play. Would Real Madrid have been better served to go after a guy that was on the market like a Mario Balotelli, who's that type of point man type striker that would have given him that type of big bodied option, or do you think they're better off with Benzema where they are now?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of better strikers than Karim Benzema out there, but I'm not sure how much any of them would have fit the system better than Benzema. I just think he's the perfect player in that system with his passing ability, his ability to score goals when needed, but he realizes that he is not the first option. If they were to bring in a Balotelli, a Falcao, they're going to expect to be the target man, and that's not who they would be at Real Madrid. So you're going to bring in a world-class striker and ask him to do something different and support the other players. And it just wouldn't have worked. And players like Balotelli, I think, would have been very bad for the Real Madrid chemistry and the club atmosphere with all the problems that he has in there. So I think the club needed to not worry about a striker. I think down the line they're going to have to. I don't know how long Benzema can keep this good form going, and they need another option there. And they brought in Chicharito, but I'm not sure how well he's going to adapt to the play there because he's more of a header. He's a sneaky, quick player. He'll help out a lot in the counter-attacking, but week by week he's not going to be a giant performer. And in the next couple of years they're going to have to address the striking position, and they're going to have to look for someone who can be better than Benzema just because of what he is as a player. But for right now, he's the player they need for the system with Ronaldo and Bale there to keep those two players playing at their best. He's a big reason why Ronaldo and Bale play so well, because he can sit deeper than most strikers and he can make those passes and hold up play. And Ronaldo and Bale love playing beside him. And in my opinion, if it's not broke, you shouldn't try to fix it. It was working great. Benzema fits the system well. Why try to bring in another name just for the sake of having another name there?
Sure.
Just while we're on the subject of Real Madrid, Trey, I was just obviously with Real Madrid's acquisition in the transfer market, Toni Kroos and Keylor Navas and James Rodriguez. The bookies have installed them as favourites for the Champions League, essentially favourites to be the best team in the world. My question to you is, do you think Real Madrid at this moment in time are the best team in the world?
No, I do not. And it kind of comes back to the fact that they made moves this summer transfer window that look really good on paper, but again, they just leave you wondering what the plan is. Xabi Alonso, they allowed him to leave to join Bayern Munich. He's getting up there in age, but he's still a great player. It does not look like Sami Khedira is going to play much of a role this year, which leaves them with a midfield of James Rodriguez, Luka Modric, and Toni Kroos. All three of those players are fantastic midfielders with a lot of talent, and they'd be a starter on almost any team in the world. But together, it's nothing but questionable. And I said this after their loss to Real Sociedad the other week. There is no coverage for the defense. And Real Madrid, like Barcelona, have a questionable back line. Sergio Ramos is not the greatest of defenders. Pepe is hit or miss. Rafael Varane is, I believe, the best center back at the club. Marcelo and Fabio Contrao love to get forward a little too much. Danny Carvajal is a great right back, but he's not where he could be at this point. So the defense needs a little bit of help. And with three attacking midfielders in front of them, they're going to get absolutely no coverage whatsoever. Real Madrid are basically playing with four defenders and six attackers, and there's nobody in between looking to clean up those balls. And Xabi Alonso was great at it. Sami Khedira was great at it. I see Ieramendi could be great at it if he was given the chance. But that match against Real Sociedad, I said before the game on Twitter, with this lineup, they're going to concede goals, and it's going to be hard to find it because they're trying to play with a FIFA 15 team or a FIFA 14 video game team with all of these attackers and defenders, but they're not accounting for what they really need out there, and that's exactly what happened in the game. Villarreal found so many holes in behind the midfielders, so much gap. There was just no coverage whatsoever, and they ended up winning the game. And I think until Ancelotti decides that he has to play Khedira in big games, or he has to play Ieramendi in big games, that they're not the best team. Playing with six attackers and four defenders is not going to make you the best team. I think with that specific lineup, if they go up against a Bayern Munich, that they will lose because they don't have what they need on the pitch. They have, again, names on the pitch, but not that other player. And, just one defensive midfielder to be a regular face in the lineup would change my answer, but that doesn't look like it's going to be the case.
Just to follow up on that question, Trey, I guess the question has to be asked. who's your favourite for the Champions League? Who do you believe is the best team in the world at this current time with the transfer window now closed?
Well, after adding Xabi Alonso, Benatia, and Lewandowski, I have to say Bayern Munich. They've been a formidable team for the last few years. They had a slip-up last year in the Champions League, but looking at that team and what Pep Guardiola has put together, they are fantastic. And adding in Lewandowski, I mean, that is just scary. It's frightening them being able to add him. And Mehdi Benatia, one of the most talked about center backs of the summer. A lot of clubs are following him. Bayern Munich just swooped and signed him when Javi Martinez got injured. So that's a great center back they're adding, and defense was questionable for them last year. I mean, they also added Pepe Reina to back up Manuel Neuer, and Xabi Alonso in that midfield, just his experience and what he can bring different to the table. They really stacked up this year. I think they had the best summer of anyone, and no matter who they played against in the Champions League, even if Real Madrid played with two defensive midfielders, or at least one, I would still go with Bayern Munich over them, just because what they already had and what they added to it is frightening. They have to be the favorites for me.
Okay, thank you very much. I believe that Rob's got one last question for you.
Yes, I do. Going back to La Liga, I guess. Just a simple 2 questions. What is your prediction of who to win La Liga, and what Spanish club will go the farthest in the Champions League this season?
To win La Liga, it's very tough. I don't think Atletico Madrid can do it again, just because there's so many players that changed there. I can't really see them repeating that, and so that brings it to Real Madrid and Barcelona. Real Madrid, their lineup is questionable without a defensive midfielder. Barcelona, a lot of things are changing there with Rakitic now in the lineup and Xavi mostly coming off the bench, and Suarez not available for a while. I think it comes down to those two. I'm still confused on who I want to go with this, but I'm going to say Barcelona this season, purely for the reason that they are playing with a lineup that fits. With Busquets in that midfield, Rakitic fits the system. They added 2 great goalkeepers, 2 center backs who will help. I think they improved in areas they needed to improve, whereas Real Madrid just kind of added pieces that they didn't really need. And I think they made the worst decision of the entire transfer window by selling Angel Di Maria, who I thought was their best player last season. Selling him was dumb in my opinion. I think because of those small tweaks to both sides that Barcelona will edge it out. And when it comes to the Champions League, it all comes down to who's going to face who. Will they win their groups? Who will they face next? What will the brackets look like? But in the Champions League, I'm going to have to go with Real Madrid because they have so much firepower against weaker opposition. I think they'll be able to win games against smaller opponents, whereas Barcelona is going to be stretched a little thin because their squad's a little bit thinner. I don't think either one of them can or will win it this year. They can always win it just based on their talent, but I would have to say Real Madrid will go maybe a step farther than Barcelona, but that Barcelona will win the league.
Okay.
In fact, just to close that out, of all the 5 leagues in Europe that we cover, we made predictions at the beginning of the year as to who would win each league. Rob and I selected Barcelona, and Ben is the only contrarian picking Real Madrid to win it all. So it's certainly close. Trey, I know we've kept you overtime here. I do want to ask one favor of you, and that is if you were available leading up to El Clasico, if you wouldn't mind coming back on the show with us and helping us preview the match.
I would absolutely love to do that. I'd be honored to.
Awesome. Thank you. We really appreciate it. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I think the interview was great, and you have a ton of information for us. If you guys want to follow him on Twitter, he is at Tre Atkinson. Again, Tre Atkinson from Bleacher Report. Thank you for joining us. We really, really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, guys. I enjoyed it. We'll talk again soon. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thank you.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Tre Atkinson from Bleacher Report, guys. That was awesome. I mean, ton of knowledge on Spanish football from him. And he told us he would be available till about 7:00. Clearly, we kept him over the line there, and I'm happy that he did. I know Rob's having a little bit of computer trouble over there, Rob, but I think you're okay, right, on Skype?
Yeah, I can still hear you in chat. I think
Cool.
it just froze, so the only problem I would have would be the low limit football chat.
Okay. Oh, all right. So I see that. Yeah. I did shoot off a message to Jeremy St. Louis, who's supposed to join us sometime after 7:30. So the only two things that I really wanted to cover tonight, other than our normal Blackburn banter and ManCity corners for SirBob, is obviously the scores from the Euro and this week's MLS coverage. We also saw that Troy in chat told us that he's going to the Vancouver Whitecaps match this week, which is pretty cool. So I'm going to leave it up to you because I know we've got about roughly 15 minutes before Jeremy joins us. I'll leave it up to you guys. What do you want to do? MLS and my trip report, or do you want to do 2016 Euros and a quick review of England?
Ben put something in the chat, I think.
Yeah. All right, Ben.
I don't mind doing the Euro since whilst it's fresh in my mind as well after because I watched the England games before we come on air, so
go on ahead
we can go through the results if you want.
Yeah, go on ahead and I'll find up the results. But why don't you give us the review of what happened with England today?
Basically, to be fair, it was quite a close first half, really. I mean, Switzerland actually did have some chances. It did feel a little bit like I thought Switzerland would come out and give a bit more than they did. It felt a little bit like Switzerland were playing away. They were camped in their own half really for the first 25 minutes or so, but then they came out and come into the game a bit, and it went in 0-0 at half time, and I don't know, we wasn't really moving the ball quick enough. I don't think Sterling playing behind the front two, he wasn't really doing much. We couldn't really keep the ball in midfield, and I think the main point for me in the England game was I can never remember his name. The guy playing in the back of the V. The Arsenal player. I don't know. I can't remember his
Chambers.
Name. No. I'm going to look it up. It's going to annoy me, and SirBob's going to get on. Let me just. Sorry, guys. I can't remember the name. But basically, now they've changed to a Diamond V. Wilshere, that's it. Wilshere doesn't quite know his defensive positioning. They're trying to play a Diamond 4-4-2, like I said, and Jack Wilshere doesn't quite know his positioning in front of the back four. So what it should look like is the back four spread, the centre back spreading. So Jack Wilshere gives him an extra option, and they're playing forward quite narrow. Thank you, SirBob. But yeah, that was the only thing that you could really take from the first half. Apart from that, it was quite a close first half. But they came out in the second half, and it was actually better football by England. And the game actually was broke with a goal from Welbeck, a really quick flow move. Rooney, Sterling to Welbeck across the box, and Welbeck finished. And then from then on, once we went 1-0, it was kind of typical Roy Hodgson, really. I got to the last 20 minutes, and it was kind of all backs to the wall. And then we happened to catch him on a break with a Welbeck finish again. But I do think Joe Hart did play quite well today. I couldn't mistake him at all. But one of the players that did impress me today was Phil Jones. I mean, I know England have got a lot of injuries at the moment for me, and a lot of players to come back. So it's not the end of the world for England. But I think it's a good result against the only team in the group really for me that's even going to challenge for the top place for England. And we beat them 2-0 in Switzerland. And like I said, this is probably only 5 or 6 of the first team players for me. So, but yeah, I think Jones has proved himself that he can play centre back there. If he can keep that standard, then he'll definitely be first choice, I think. And they'll keep Jagiel for backup, especially going into the future the next 2 years. Obviously, Jones has got the pace and to come out the back as well. And also, it gives us another option if Welbeck is challenging Sturridge up front. Then I think to have a good Welbeck firing, because in fairness, I know we have slated him a few times in this show, but he didn't really get much of a chance playing in the centre for Man United. So if he can do that in the middle and he can challenge Sturridge in the centre, then having 2 out-and-out strikers with Rooney as well linking the play, and then Sterling at the top of the triangle. I think we can cause some problems, and I think if we can get that Wilshere, if Wilshere can work out his place and play that defensive position, that holding role, like Gerrard does at Liverpool, if he can make that his own, then I think we can cause team problems, and maybe actually go to the Euros and maybe make a little bit of noise. I think we're still a bit too young to be any kind of contenders, but I think after how we crashed out the World Cup, I'll just take getting out of the groups in the Euros. But positive result in the whole.
Yeah. So getting back to the results from this past couple days of qualifying for the Euro 2016. Starting back on Sunday, we had Denmark 2-1 over Armenia. Northern Ireland 2-1 over Hungary. I believe that was a comeback win. I think it was the Ireland game. Ireland also 2-1 winners over Georgia. In a major upset, Albania 1-0 over Portugal. That's a Cristiano Ronaldo-less Portugal. Romania 1-0 over Greece in another upset there. Finland 3-1 over Faroe Islands. Poland 7-0 over Gibraltar. And I wanted to kind of talk about that one a little bit. With the team that Gibraltar fielded, I'll have to find it. There were as many police officers on the Gibraltar side as there were professional footballers, which I think is fantastic, to see something like that. But good for them. But they did suffer a hat trick from Robert Lewandowski in a 7-0 loss to Poland. Germany 2-1 over Scotland, and probably the most entertaining match of the day. I believe 2 goals from Thomas Müller in that one. Results from earlier today. Russia 4-0 over Liechtenstein. Montenegro 2-0 over Moldova. Sweden and Austria played to a 1-1 draw. England, as Ben mentioned, 2-0 over Switzerland. Lithuania 2-0 over San Marino. Estonia 1-0 over Slovenia. And in Group C, to close it out, Luxembourg and Belarus played to a 1-1 draw. Slovakia 1-0 over Ukraine in an upset. And Spain getting back on their winning ways, 5-1 over Macedonia. So looking at the upcoming fixtures for tomorrow, we've got Kazakhstan, Latvia. And actually, I'm going to cut it off because we're being joined by Jeremy St. Louis. We're being joined now by Jeremy St. Louis from BeIN Sport. Jeremy, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm glad to see you were able to make it and join us tonight on Low Limit Football. How did things go in the show at the locker room?
Well, I don't know. How did they go?
I couldn't listen, but I was able to watch, and there was a lot of smiling, and Ray Hudson was as animated as ever. So I think everything went fairly well.
Yes, everything went fairly well. Hey, happy anniversary!
Thank you.
1 year.
1 whole year of podcasting, 41 episodes so far. Not too shabby.
That's brilliant. Congratulations to you guys. That's a big accomplishment for a podcast.
Thank you. I want to introduce you to my co-hosts, Ben the Machine Smith. Ben, go ahead and say hello to Jeremy. Unless I've lost him. Actually, I think I've lost both of my co-hosts here. So let me see if I.
This works well for me then.
Yeah. No. Let me add them back in here quickly. It seems. If you'll bear with me 1 second, I think I don't know how the heck I lost them, but let's see if I can just add them right back into this call here. Good old Skype as it is, and we'll just keep making do with what we've got here. While I'm adding my co-host back into the call here, one thing I want to ask you, which is probably the most important question that they probably won't care about. I wanted to bring up the Winnipeg Jets to start.
Oh.
Okay. Because obviously, as a fan of hockey, you're very happy to see them come back after I think about 8 or 9 years being away from Winnipeg, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. It was 15 years.
15. Oh, even more. Yes. Time flies. Now,
yes.
As you and I have interacted on Twitter before, I'm a diehard Hartford Whalers fan. What are the odds on me getting my Hartford Whalers back to Hartford with Gary Bettman still in position?
Well, you know what? I keep hearing that the Hartford Whalers are certainly one of those franchises. I mean, I think they're still one of the biggest selling jerseys in the NHL year after year. And I mean, from what I can glean here and there for the little bit of hockey that I do get the chance to read about, that Hartford is certainly one of those teams that is beloved, and I think it's on the NHL's radar in terms of expansion. So you know what? I used to say I remember saying to a couple of friends of mine when I was working in Manitoba just before the Jets came back that I did not think that I would see the Winnipeg Jets come back to Winnipeg in my lifetime, and probably within 6 months I was proven incorrect. So never say never.
No, I hear you. It's one of those things that it's one of the very few times I've actually cried as an adult is that last game of the Whalers season in 97-98. So I would love nothing more than to have them come back into my life. So glad to know that I've added my co-host back in. So let me start over again. Ben the Machine Smith joins us from England. Ben, say hello to Jeremy St. Louis.
Hello, Jeremy. It's nice to have you on the show. We're privileged to have you on. I know you've come straight from work and you phoned us up, so we appreciate having you on the show. And we've
my pleasure.
We have actually some interactive guests. We actually have a live chat going on as we go. So as well as us hopefully getting some answers out of you and your opinion on a few things. We're going to try and hazard some guest questions as well. So I'll let Joe start off with a couple of questions, and then we'll just go from there.
Yeah, and before I kick them off, I do want to also introduce our other co-host, who is Roberto Rojas, who I think sent you a Twitter request to kind of follow him. So Rob, say hello to Jeremy.
Hello, Jeremy. It's good to have you on the show.
Thanks very much for having me. My pleasure.
So now I'm glad I was able to get the hockey question out of the way first. The first thing I want to ask you is more of a work question. We did ask this question of George DeMatteis last week, and I want to pose it to you. Who's your favorite person to work with at BeIN Sport?
Oh, wow! You're really putting me on the spot, eh?
Yeah, we don't take it easy on people here.
Oh, you know what? It's very tough to narrow down because I work on two very different programs on the locker room and then on the extra during the week, and I'm pretty much working with a different crew of people each night. It's a tough question to answer, and I geez. Yeah. I love working with Ray. I think Ray is such a dynamic personality. I think I love working with Ray because I finally found the sort of the way to push his buttons a little bit.
Okay. I was going to say, George had mentioned that he liked working with everybody, that the crew at BeIN Sport in general is great to work with, guys kidding around, ladies kidding around all the time. But he said probably his favorite person to work with is Kay Murray.
Well, yeah, there's the room, the place is full of professionals. We had a meeting this afternoon prior to the locker room, and it was just a general meeting, and it involved pretty much everybody that was on the air at BeIN Sport. And I was sitting there for a second and take a look around the room, and I'm looking at all these people, and sometimes you pinch yourself when you're sitting there and you're like, man, like this is. I get to work with all these people. They're talented professionals. They're great people. I mean, they're good. They're good people, good personalities. Their hearts are, in the right place. They are people who are passionate about the sport. They're passionate about sports in general, and it's just it's phenomenal to work with such a great group of people. And I don't disagree with George certainly that it's such a tremendous place to work with such a talented group of people. And my previous experience at Fox, we were a small crew as well. Like I was on a small staff on that show at Fox, and it was very tight-knit. And the same thing is at BeIN Sports, and that's one of the attractions. That was one of the attractions for me, is that the fact that it is a smaller staff. You don't necessarily have the big corporation problems that you would have at say like a four-letter or even an NBC or something like that. Not that those problems would be bad, but it does make things a little bit more streamlined.
Okay. So, Rob, I think you have a question for Jeremy.
Yes, I do. How did you get the attention from Fox Sports and BeIN Sports within your time on TV?
Sorry, I don't quite understand the question.
How did you get the attention of Fox Sports to work for Fox Sports?
How did you catch Fox Sports' eye?
Okay. I was I was actually doing the weather on a news station in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and the person who developed the idea for what eventually morphed into Fox Soccer Report he approached me because I had a sports broadcasting background prior to doing this weather job, and so he approached me and said, would you be interested in doing this, sort of part-time, sort of splitting your duties, doing weather and doing this? And I said, yeah, that would be great. So we kicked off the show, which at that time was Global Sports Link. Nobody in the U.S. would have seen it at that time because it was a Canada-only show on Fox Sports World Canada. And we did that show for about a year. It was a 5-day-a-week show, half an hour. And then Fox Sports World, which is what was down here in the United States, saw it, and they said, you know what, we can turn this show into something that we can certainly use, a property that we can use. And so that's what they did. It became the Fox Sports World Report, and then after a few years of that, it became Fox Soccer Report, and that was what it had. That's what it finished as when it went off the air. When Fox Soccer Channel went off the air as well. So for them, it was for me, it was just fortuitous. I was part of the staff already, and so they didn't necessarily have to bring anybody in. They thought that I was, I could at least competently go on television and not make them look bad. So they decided to continue with me. And full credit to Fox Soccer. They have some wonderful people that work that worked at Fox Soccer who really helped to grow those of us. I mean, we're a bunch of people producing a show up in Canada, in Winnipeg, Canada, which, I mean, nobody would consider that to be a broadcasting mecca, although there are a lot of, prominent Canadian broadcasters that have come, have gone through there. But we're producing a show there. They're in Los Angeles. They have no reason to really invest anything in us other than, give us this show 7 days a week, but would send me on sideline reporting gigs for Major League Soccer. They sent me to the Champions League final. They sent me to MLS Cup, and they really did a good job of growing all of us on that team. We all got chances to sort of go out and do these things that we wouldn't have been able to do. And so, I mean, for me, it was just I happened to grow into it. I think that it's something that, I went to school for it, so I kind of fell backwards into it, and it was something that I really enjoyed and something that I didn't have a problem dedicating a lot of time to. And so, I was happy that Fox, was able to see that I had that talent, and they invested in that and helped to grow me. And that, of course, is what has led me to BeIN Sports.
All right. Just to follow up on that question, given the fact that you are you interviewed a lot of people, who do you think you gave the best interview to in your career, to anyone in soccer?
I would say, the best interview. I know who I prepared for the most, but I would say that probably the best interview for me was with Michel Platini, who is the UEFA president. I interviewed him before the Champions League final in 2010. We had the chance to sit down with him because Fox at that time had the rights. Well, they still have the rights, but we had the Champions League final. It was the first time that we were doing the Champions League final on Fox, and so it was a big get for us to get Michel Platini and to be able to sit down with him for 15, 20 minutes. Bobby McMahon was there with me. Bobby was certainly he was in the room and certainly helped with the direction we wanted to take that interview. But I would say that in terms of the best interview, that was probably the best interview I've done to date. It was an interview that got picked up by Sky Sports, and a number of papers picked up some of the comments he said, because I asked him a lot of questions about, like goal line technology and where does he see the game going, and does he see himself being the FIFA president at one point? And this was in 2010, and those are issues that are, of course, still being discussed now, but at that time it was something that, he wasn't really talking a lot about. So I'd say that was probably the best interview that I had done. The one I prepared for the most was when I interviewed David Beckham when he came over. And I spent like 6 weeks preparing for that interview. That at that time was the biggest interview that I'd ever had in my career. And I thought that interview went very well. I was very happy with it when I was done with it. But in terms of what I would say was probably my best interview, I would say was probably Mr. Platini.
All right. Just one last thing. Is it true that that you interviewed Wesley Sneijder right after the Champions League final? And it was the first public confirmation that Mourinho was definitely leaving the club for Real Madrid?
Yes. We had heard the way that the mix zone actually worked. at that game is that with about 10 minutes left in the game, I had a sideline spot where I was watching the game, and so about 10 minutes left in the game, you make your way to the mix zone, which at that time, and it still is very regimented. So what happens is you've got a bunch of broadcasters, they all have a space, and what UEFA does is they just bring players through sort of one at a time. And they could come to you, they might go to the people next to you, and they just sort of go essentially booth to booth to booth to booth to booth. And because I was one of the first people that was there and was set up, when the players started coming out, like right after the game, I was one of the first people that was there and set up because I had left the pitch like 10 minutes earlier because I didn't really know what to expect, so I wanted to make sure that I was ready. And then when word started coming through, I started hearing little things here and there that Mourinho's leaving, he's going to Real Madrid. And then when they started bringing Schneider through, I had actually made good with the UEFA PR person. And because we were doing the game for the United States, it was a final for the first time that was being broadcast in the United States on that particular day to such a large audience. They wanted to make sure that we got who we were able to put information out there in post-match reaction. Said, do you want Wesley Schneider? And I said, of course I want Wesley Schneider. And so one of the first things I asked him, I got his comments on the game, but then I asked him, we've been hearing, is it true? And he said, yeah. He told us in the locker room he is going to Real Madrid. And the other broadcasters who were just getting set up and were around me, all just kind of stopped what they were doing, and then all of a sudden it was like everybody had to have Wesley Schneider. And then Sully Montari came through, and then Massimo Moratti came through, and Moratti also confirmed that Mourinho was leaving.
All right. It appears that Ben has a question for you.
Yeah, hi Jeremy. You just touched upon the David Beckham interview actually, and I had a question for you about that actually. Just give us an idea of like how excited or and nervous you was when you was granted that one-on-one interview with David Beckham. You said you did a lot of prep for us. What was it like for you? Such a big name and a pivotal moment in your career.
Well, when we heard that Beckham was coming over to the United States, I was actually on a plane to the NSCAA conference in Indianapolis, and when I landed, I looked at my phone and I had a bunch of calls and a bunch of messages and texts, saying that Beckham has announced that he's coming to Major League Soccer. And so I got on the phone right away and I was talking to my producers and my senior producer, and I was like, we got to get him. We have to get him. This is an interview that we have to get. We have to get David Beckham. We need to be one of the first. We need to do it. And so we talked to Fox about it, and of course they obviously wanted to do it. So what I did is I contacted the representatives of Beckham, and what they said is that I was a part of. They would let us know whether or not Beckham would be interested in doing the interview. So we sent them a copy of Fox Soccer Report, and showed to give them an idea of what kind of show that they were looking at that David would be a part of. And they came back and said, yeah, okay, you know what, this is a legitimate show, it's a good show, and I can't imagine the requests that they got for interviews from some of the people that he may have gotten requests from at that time. And so they said yes, and the funny thing about it was I had prepared, once the interview got cleared, once Beckham's people said yes, okay, we're going to do an interview, we're going to be in Toronto, you guys can be a part of it, you'll have 20 minutes with David, you can sit down, it's a one-on-one, you're not going to be in a scrum or a press conference, it's a one-on-one, and there you go. And so I started prepping 6 weeks before the interview, and one of the things that I wanted to do was I went over old interviews with David and other interviews that he's done. And the thing about Beckham is there's probably nothing that you can ask him that he has not been asked before. And that is pretty much about anything, like fashion, football, whatever. But one of the things I wanted to do with that interview is take into account our audience for Fox Soccer Report. Die-hard football fans, not football fans who are interested in what jeans his wife is promoting or what hairstyle he's going with next, fans that are interested in football. And so I tried to tailor all of my questions to his football experience and what he's done in football and what he hopes to do in football. The funny part is that I think it was a week or like a few days before the interview was set to take place. I think it was a week before the interview was set to take place. He got hurt, and then his people said he's not even going to go to Toronto. And so then it was like we were in limbo because we're like, okay, what's going to happen? Because we are supposed to have this one-on-one with him. Fox has been selling it. Like they've been looking at it, and then it's all of a sudden he may not be going. It turns out that a couple of days before we were supposed to go, they called and said, yes, David is going to go to Toronto. You still have the one-on-one. And so we went to Toronto and did the one-on-one with him. And I have to say, in terms of the interviews that I've done, he is quite possibly one of the nicest people that I've ever met in sport, in all the sports that I've covered. He was a class individual from the moment that we walked in the door. He gets up, he shakes your hand, asks your name, asks a little bit about you while you're getting prepared. And at the end of the interview, one of the things that struck me was, and this is a major no-no, you're not supposed to do this as a reporter, but I mean, it's David Beckham. You're not supposed to ask him for a picture. But I thought, you know what, I'm probably never going to get to interview David Beckham again. I'm from Winnipeg, Canada. Nobody gives a crap, so I'm just going to ask him. So I said, David, would you mind if I got a picture with you? And he was like, no problem. So we took a picture. And then he took a picture with everybody in the room. And then he went and introduced himself to everybody in the room. And he shook everybody's hand. And there's probably 20, 25 people in this room. And he's doing that, and he's swapping stories and talking to people. And finally his PR people came in and said, David, come on, we got to go. We got other things we got to do. But he was genuinely interested in talking to people. And that was one of the things that struck me, and it's kind of stuck with me about David Beckham. You hear a lot of stories about David Beckham. People don't like him. They don't care about his football. They think he's whatever. For me, the experience I had with him, he was a class individual from the minute we started till the minute we finished. And for me, I was lucky enough that I actually made an impression with David, and that the next day I was in an elevator on my way up to the press box in Toronto, and his agent was in the elevator and said, David would like a copy of the interview. He really appreciated the fact that you asked him the questions you asked him and stuck to the football. He would like a copy of the interview. And so, yeah, okay, he can have a copy of it. And then when the Galaxy were playing in the MLS Cup in 2009, we sent a crew to Seattle, and I was part of that crew. And I was in a bar in Seattle, the oldest English bar in Seattle, doing an interview with some people. And we were, after the interview was over, we're sitting there having a pint. And I checked my phone, I've got messages. So my producer's like, you got to call me. So I call my producer, and he says, Beckham's people heard that you were here, and they want to know if you want to do another interview. Wow. And so I was like, yeah. So we ended up, I spent 6 weeks preparing for that. For the first time I interviewed him, I had about 2 hours to prepare for the second time that we interviewed him at MLS Cup. And again, it was a great experience, and probably one of the nicest people I've ever met in the sport. Oh wow, that's nice to hear. I figured it'd be a nice moment, a big moment, and it's nice to hear that some of the footballers at least are grounded and down to earth. I believe Joe has a question for you, Jeremy, actually from the interactive chat, so I'll hand over to Joe.
Jeremy, one thing that runs concurrently with our show is that we have a live interactive chat where we invite guests to come in and chat up with the other guests in the chat room, and as well as when we have a guest online or on the air to post some questions. And this is posted from someone in the room. Actually, it is somebody we call SirBob. We actually have a segment of the program named after him. He's listened to all of our episodes. Today he is posing in the chat room as Gordie Howe, and is awesome. And is a resident of Toronto, by the way. But he wanted us to ask you about Nick Gerber and Steve Cohen, more specifically in regards to Cohen. That I guess Cohen's had a fall from grace. Wanted to know your thoughts on those two gentlemen.
Well, they did. They were the World Football Daily guys, I believe, and I had a chance to go on their show a couple of times, and the experience I had with them was fantastic. They were gentlemen to me. They certainly were nice guys. I didn't have a negative experience with them. I know that there were some comments that were made about the situation with Liverpool and Hillsborough, and it caused a pretty big uproar and did a lot of damage to that show. But I mean, for me, I never had that experience with them. I never had really that much interaction other than being on their show a couple of times. But I mean, for me, my experience, I never had an issue with them, and they came across to me as guys who were, they had some fun and they seemed like they knew their football to hang me out to dry, so to speak. So that's one of the things.
Right. This same person would like to know how a proud Canadian like yourself is a supporter of Man United. Keep in mind that the segment that we named after him is the SirBob ManCity Corner. So I'm gonna kick it over to Rob because I like I mentioned to you in email, we wanted to ask you a lot about Man United. They're always in the news, and certainly over this past transfer window. So Rob, I know you have a question about Man United.
I most certainly do. I do have this. What do you think happened to Manchester United last season, despite the fact that Sir Alex Ferguson went on and called David Moyes the chosen one to succeed him and hopefully get the same success as his predecessor? Obviously, getting 7th place in the Premier League did not mean anything, and as the fans, the board, basically everyone just wanted him out. They replaced him with Louis van Gaal, who also, with this new Manchester United squad, with all the big players, Di Maria, Falcao, Daley Blind, and all these other players, they also have been having quite a good season so far. What do you think happened in Manchester United that really changed a lot of what people thought as a team that had been successful for the last 2 decades or so, but now they have to struggle of having to be watching this Manchester United squad get lucky enough to even get a win? What do you think has happened?
Well, in most sports, you have cycles. And I really think that with Manchester United, they're going through a cycle. They're going through a turnover. A great generation of players, that cycle has come to an end. And because of the financial situation with the club, the financial situation in football, they just were not able to refresh the squad in ways that maybe they had been in the past, or that the reality of the financial situation in world football, I mean, it's ridiculous. Last week's transfer window was another record in terms of the money that was spent. And I think that Sir Alex Ferguson, his last year when they won that title, they had no business winning that title. That squad is not a squad that should have won the Premier League title. They won the Premier League title in spite of the other teams. SirBob, Manchester City should have won, but they didn't, because for whatever reason, they didn't get the points they needed against some of the other teams. Manchester United had no business winning the title in Ferguson's last season, but they did, and that put a lot of pressure on David Moyes. So all of a sudden, an average squad that Ferguson was able to take to that next level, that he was able to get pretty much every ounce of excellence out of them, they're not going to be able to do that year after year. So now David Moyes is tasked with refreshing that squad, bringing in players that are going to keep the titles coming at Manchester United. Now, whether it was David Moyes, whether it was Louis van Gaal even then, whether it would have been Jose Mourinho, that squad was never going to be a title-contending squad last season. I was hoping that they would finish within the top 4. When the season started, I said, if we can get a Champions League spot, I'm happy. We don't need to win the title. We just need a Champions League spot. We need to stay in the Champions League. I'm good with that. But David Moyes, for whatever reason, I don't know if there were backroom dealings or he just didn't have the confidence, but the players didn't believe in him. Okay, he got rid of the entire backroom staff, which I think caused some problems. His tactics, he didn't necessarily understand what he wanted to do. David Moyes is said to be one of the smartest guys in world football. He is said to be, in terms of the next level of coaching, data collection and all that. He's one of these guys that's supposed to be on the cutting edge of this stuff, but yet he couldn't get this squad to buy into what he wanted them to do. Now, whether that's because he didn't have the titles behind him to back that up, because he didn't win anything at Everton. So whether he, having a good reputation as a coach is not the same as having a good reputation because you've won a gazillion titles, or because you've taken teams to the top. David Moyes didn't do that, and I think that was part of the problem. The players didn't believe in him. Could he have gotten it done? Maybe, we'll never know. What I was saying tonight before we started the locker room, we actually had tonight on the locker room Gary Bailey, the former Manchester United goalkeeper, and we were talking about Angel Di Maria and the number 7 shirt and how iconic that shirt is at Manchester United and how heavy it's going to be for Angel Di Maria to wear it, especially if he doesn't come good, if he's not, he doesn't continue to be the great player that he is, if he struggles. But one of the things that I've noticed about Manchester United in their early start to the season is you're hearing from Van Gaal the same things that you heard Moyes saying last year. This is a squad that needs more players. We need better defenders. We need to do this. And United, having gone through the Moyes experience last year, now seem to believe that, you know what, that's right. We do need this. We need to spend. So what they did during the transfer window, spend, get a loan in for Falcao, and now they're talking about, well, we're going to have like a big player coming in every year at Manchester United.
I do have a follow-up question on the Moyes aspect of Man United. If you had to put your finger on one moment that was kind of his downfall, what would you say it was?
Well, getting knocked out of the Champions League, like getting the moment that they were done in the Champions League. Like not done in the Champions League, but they were not going to qualify for the Champions League. The board had been behind him, they'd supported him, the whole thing. You heard after he was fired about all sort of the backroom stuff that they wanted him to go earlier, but they needed to make sure that they had if they didn't make the Champions League the following season, there was a clause in his contract that allowed them to fire him, and that if they had made the Champions League, then they would have had to come to a decision in the summer because they would have had to pay him for remaining time on his contract. But I think that not getting into the Champions League was what did it. That's what did it for him. Is that the one moment? There was probably a number of moments that led to that. I mean, there was a number of historic losses last year for Manchester United. They hadn't been beaten at home by a number of teams in decades, and now all of a sudden you're losing these games. Is it Moyes' fault? Partly, he's the manager, so it falls on him. But I think a lot of the responsibility needs to go on some of those players, too. And, let's be honest, like I said, they're an average squad at best. They were an average squad at best last year. Getting into the Champions League should have had people doing cartwheels, because there was no way that squad is anywhere near the top squads in the Premier League.
All right, Rob, I know you had a follow-up that you wanted to lead over to the new head coach now, Louis van Gaal. Rob, what did you want to ask?
Yes, I do. Jeremy, on your opinion, do you believe Van Gaal is the perfect manager for Manchester United? And as well, do you believe that he's been spending right? Obviously, with the big signings of Ander Herrera, Luke Shaw, Marcos Rojo, Di Maria, Daley Blind. Do you think and Falcao, do you think he's done enough in this transfer window, despite the fact that many fans for Manchester United, want players, want defenders and midfielders? Think that he's spent right, and if so, do you think Van Gaal will do well in his first season at Manchester United?
Well, I think he's got a squad that has the capability to beat teams 9-8 or 5-4 because they have no defense. This is a team that need defenders. Why he's playing 3 at the back in the Premier League, that's still something that it boggles my mind, and it boggles a bunch of people. The Premier League is not a league where you can put average defenders, play 3 of them at the back, and expect to win games. There's no way. They're going to get out. They're going to get outmanned. They're going to get outpaced. They're going to get ripped apart. And that's exactly what's been happening. I mean, the first results of Swansea. I mean, holy crap! I mean, I was shaking my head. I was like, what are they doing? What are you doing playing that? Like, you can't. So, I mean, for me, has he spent the right money? I think that he's gotten good players, but I think the fact that they did not get a good quality defender is a big problem. It's a big problem for them, and I think we're going to see it throughout the season. I also think, how does United's formation change now that they've added Falcao? Is Juan Mata the odd man out? Does Rooney shift back into the midfield now? How are you going to line up this squad? How are you going to fit all these players in? I mean, I was reading reports today that Juventus are now interested in Juan Mata, but Juan Mata's a good player. He's not a bad player. He's a good player. I don't understand why they would necessarily. I mean, if Falcao's offered to you, obviously you're going to take Di Maria. They're quality players. But is your team that much better in terms of where they were? Have you addressed everything that needs to be addressed? I don't necessarily think that they have.
All right. I believe that Ben has a question for you, Jeremy.
Yeah, actually, Jeremy, I was going to ask you a question based on the formation. Actually, obviously, you as a Man United fan, and Louis van Gaal's gone in there and changed the formation to 3-5-2. Obviously, you don't actually see that much of it in the Premier League, to be fair. Not really sure if Man United, at this stage, with the lack of defensive, you said, to play three centre-backs like that, and it does feel like a lot of the midfield don't know quite where they are defensively. Do you think that Louis van Gaal's been a bit stubborn in his choice of formation, or would you have still stuck 3-5-2? Do you think he should be a bit more flexible?
Well, I mean, Louis van Gaal has certainly, he's a proven manager. He knows what he's doing, and you have to kind of. There comes a point where, I mean, we're all armchair coaches, right? We all think we know what's best, but we're not the guy that's sitting in that chair. We're not the guy that has to make that decision. He has been in football long enough that I'm willing to trust what he thinks is best. The question I have is he playing the system that he's used to playing, or is he playing the system that's best for what he has? And that's a question that hasn't been answered for me yet. That's a question that nobody's been able to answer for me yet. Is he simply playing what he knows, or is he playing what he thinks is the best system for Manchester United? That's something that I don't know. That's my lingering question.
Yeah, that was what I was touching upon. I think it's I don't think anyone knows really it's going forward. Just a question actually touching upon expectations. Really, I know we've danced around it a little bit. You personally, as a Man United fan, what are your expectations for this year? What do you think is a successful year for Man United this year, and what do you think is achievable?
Getting into the Champions League. That for me is a successful year for Manchester United this year. Are they going to win the Premier League title? No, they're not going to win the Premier League title. I don't even know if they'll come within 10 points of winning the Premier League title. For me, as a Manchester United fan, I want to get them back into the Champions League. It's going to take a couple of years. This is a team that rebuild doesn't happen overnight. It's going to take some time, and I'm willing to give it some time. I think Louis van Gaal is a good manager. I also think he's the guy that can do it because he's a disciplinarian. This is a team that like I was saying earlier, I think maybe some of the players didn't buy into what David Moyes was doing, and maybe David Moyes needed to take a harder hand, but maybe he couldn't. Louis van Gaal is a guy that's going to come in and he's going to say, okay, we're going to do this my way, and if you don't want to do it my way, then you're going to be out the door. Like Ferguson was. Ferguson didn't take crap from anybody. How many players did Ferguson move out because they decided they wanted to do what they wanted to do, or they challenged his authority? Van Gaal's the same kind of guy. And I think for us, winning or getting into the Champions League this year is a success. I'm not expecting us to win the title, but I'm hoping, if we can get into the top four, I would be certainly happy with that. And then next year, pushing towards getting closer to winning another Premier League title.
Just to follow on from there, do you think with the strength that's in the Premier League now, obviously the Chelsea and ManCity are established, and obviously you're going to be battling with the likes of Arsenal and Liverpool and possibly Everton, do you think with the influx of players that have come in, I mean, not only you change your formation, but there's a big change in faces, especially in the first team there's going to be. Do you think they can gel quick enough to get ahead of Arsenal and Liverpool and break into the Champions League this year?
I think so. I think once they get, I think it's going to take. I mean, a new manager thing. We used to say. I used to talk with Bobby McMahon about this all the time. Bobby McMahon used to call it the 8-game bump. When you bring in a new manager, you're going to have a bump for 8 games. 8 games, the results are probably going to be better than they were in the previous 8 games. But then after that's over, then you start to see, how good this manager is, how the players have bought in, or whether they haven't. I think with Louis van Gaal, it's going to take some time. I'm expecting around probably November, December. I mean, they don't have the Champions League stress this year, right? They're out of the cup, one of the cups anyways. So, I mean, their schedule is a lot lighter than it has been in the past. So I think that you're going to see around November, December, my hope anyways, is that United is starting to gel. They're a team that okay, now we do know what we're going to do. We know what style we're going to play. We know how we're going to play it and the skills of the people that we have to play. So I think that around that time, I'm expecting United to start to push upwards. It's going to take some time for these players to gel and get used to one another and get used to the system that Van Gaal wants them to play. But I think once they do, I think then you'll start to see, sort of that upward rise of Manchester United I think we can all agree, but I think that there is certainly enough talent there that they can certainly get past an Arsenal, an Everton, a Tottenham. I don't know whether they can match Liverpool or not. We're still kind of waiting to see what happens with, they don't have Luis Suarez now, so impact them because he was such a big player for them. But even challenge at Liverpool.
Just one last question from me before I move over to Joe. Touching upon the same subject, how long do you feel, in your mind, it will be before United again that were the force in the first decade of this millennium?
I think it's probably going to be 3 seasons. I would expect that within 3 seasons, United will be back either winning the Premier League title or really giving it a good run. And possibly even winning the Champions League.
Okay, thank you very much. I believe Joe's got a question for you.
Yeah, with that answer, you've actually set off SirBob in the chat. He's losing his mind.
I would imagine that he's not losing his mind in a good way, that he's probably disagreeing significantly with what I'm saying.
Quite. No, my question for you is really obviously the two major transfers that they picked up this year, which was Angel Di Maria, or Mamma Mia Di Maria, and Radamel Falcao. I want your thoughts on the two transfers individually as to how you think they may help the team. And I also want to ask you about what your thoughts are on the fact that they didn't address that center back position.
Well, Angel Di Maria is probably one of the top 10 players in the world right now, if not even higher. He might even be like top 6, top 5. And what he brings to Manchester United, the way he was playing with Real Madrid last year, they wanted to get rid of him, and Ancelotti convinced him to stay, and he was outstanding for Real Madrid. Last week in the friendly, the Argentina-Germany friendly, he was out of his mind. And that's the kind of player that I think he's going to excel at Manchester United. I'm so happy that they managed to get him because he's such a great playmaker, he's such a great player, and I really think that he's going to wear the 7 shirt very well. Falcao's coming off this knee injury, so we have to kind of I'm not Falcao. It's kind of like in the NFL. If you're going into your free agent year, you're the last year of your contract, you have to perform. You contract. I think that Falcao has a season where he has to prove that he's back to 100%. He's back to scoring goals. He's back to El Tigre, and I think that's what we need. That's what we need from Falcao. The question is, how does Van Gaal fit them all in? How does he get all these players, and how is the formation going to change, or how is he going to work all these players in and get the best out of them in the position that he's going to play them in? Like I said with the defense, I really think they needed to address the defense, and I think they might do that in January. Maybe Van Gaal is looking at it right now from a point that, okay, we're desperate, and that's the way it always is at the end of the transfer window, right? The prices go up in the last week of the window because teams are desperate. So maybe there was nothing there that was of value that the club or himself was willing to overpay for. So maybe he's looking at it in a January perspective and saying, okay, maybe in January we can address this. Maybe we can look at this in January and see by then, the group stage of the Champions League is over. Now you're into the knockout stage. So maybe you can bring a player in from a team that gets knocked out of the Champions League that maybe would be interested in coming to Manchester United, although I wouldn't understand why anybody wouldn't be interested in coming to Manchester United. Sorry, SirBob, but it's just the way it is. But I think that that's maybe something they're going to try and address in January, and if not, then depending on how the season goes, they will certainly probably address it next summer.
All right, I know Ben has one more Man United question for you, and then we'll take it over to something a little more Canadian.
Yeah, we do have another question from the chat, which we're going to do to this. But just one last question. Someone that maybe not forgotten in the transfer window, but I do think with the Falcao coming in, it's kind of been pushed in the back a bit. But Daley Blind seemed like a real good transfer that went through. I really rate him. I think he's a really intelligent, great awareness for a footballer. And I do think in the formation that Man United are trying to play, for me, I feel like he could make a real good difference to the Man United team. I just kind of wanted to get your opinion on him, and if you think that the team and the way they're trying to play at the moment, it'd be a good fit for you.
You know what? I think Daley Blind will be a great fit, and I feel the same way as you do. When at the World Cup, he had a great World Cup. He was fantastic, especially that first game when they played against Spain. He was tremendous. I mean, I was looking at it, I was like, holy man, this guy's a player, sort of out of nowhere. And he was a player that I wanted to keep an eye on throughout the course of the tournament, and he certainly didn't disappoint. Some games he kind of, it was a matter of having the space. I mean, Spain gave him the space to sort of do the things that he was able to do, and I think that that's the thing. When you come up against teams that are going to give you those opportunities, then you're going to see a player like that certainly excel. At the same time, when he is not able to necessarily get forward and become as big a part of the offense as he was with Holland at times, I still think he's not going to hurt you defensively, which is important. I think that Daley Blind is certainly a good acquisition. I also like Ander Herrera. I think both of those players are, you're not hearing anything about those players, but they're certainly quality players. I'm with you. I like the acquisition of Daley Blind. I think he's going to be, he could be one of those players that you don't hear much about right now, but come the end of the season, he could be one of the candidates for player of the season for Manchester United.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Think alike. I'm going to hand you over to Joe, who's got a question in the chat for you.
All right. Like I said, I'm going to bring it back to Canada, but the question is really about Toronto FC. They've sort of been in a little bit of disarray, especially over the past few weeks. The rumors.
A little bit?
Yeah. I'm being nice. The rumors of Jermaine Defoe leaving, and now I guess he won't play another match for Toronto FC for the rest of the season. The lackluster play from Michael Bradley in general. Losing the Brazilian goalkeeper now, Julio Cesar. And then as SirBob was so kind to point out in chat, they've had 8 years of no playoffs. The season ticket attendance has dropped in half, and the stadium's barely full. What do you think needs to happen in Toronto or with Toronto FC in general to kind of get this thing back on the right track?
Oh man, how much time do we have? Holy!
We've got all night, but
yeah, as someone, I mean, I was working at Fox when Toronto FC came in. I had the chance when they were at their first MLS draft. I was there for that. That was the NSCAA. I had a chance to have a number of conversations with Mo Johnston. There may or may not have been beer involved, but just and talking to him about what the plan was for Toronto FC, that they wanted this to be a significant franchise in Major League Soccer. Not just because they're a brand new team, not just because they're in one of the biggest cities, but they wanted them to be a good team, an excellent team, and that the first season we're not going to get into the playoffs, but we want to build something so that within probably 4 or 5 years we're challenging for the MLS Cup. That hasn't happened. And one of the things that has struck me about Toronto FC is that they just can't seem to get it right. They can't seem to get it right. They can't seem to find the right coach, right? Or the structure above is such that it just doesn't function properly. Tim Leiweke, you bring him in, huge name, huge player, in terms of what he's been able to do on the business side of Major League Soccer, and now he's leaving. Now he's leaving because two telecommunications companies that they happen to own, one thinks that they're being favored over the other, and so he's just like, you know what, I'm not going to deal with this. I got more important things to do, so I'm just going to sail off into the sunset. And who loses because of that? MLSE loses, Toronto FC loses, and now the whole thing with Ryan Nelson, who, I mean, I'm not the first one to say this, should never have been hired as a coach in the first place for Toronto FC. I mean, the guy doesn't have his coaching badges. He was still playing. It says something to me about the franchise when the people running it don't think that the person who is the coach needs to have his badges. Now, is that because they couldn't get someone who has the qualifications to do it? Like it's not appealing enough, or is it because their organization is such a shambles that they just don't get it? I mean, what's going to fix Toronto FC? I wish I could put my finger on that, but I think it starts at the top. I think you need more football people involved in there, and you need to be able to give them the room to do the things that they want to do. MLSE is a huge corporation. They run 3 sports teams, and they've got telecommunications companies. And I mean, I can't imagine what Tim Leiweke was going through, being a part of all of that and trying to make Toronto FC into a success. Yeah, they made a splash with Defoe. They made a splash with Michael Bradley. But where are they now? And that was the thing. When they made those signings, I was like, hey, Okay, Toronto FC, serious business. They're obviously good enough to attract these good players to come here. What's going to happen now? Now let's see what happens. And while me, like a number of other fans, had high hopes for what held for them this season, it's turned into another circus act, which is incredibly disappointing. I keep seeing renderings of how they want to expand Toronto's stadium. For what? What are you going to be expanding it for? There's not going to be anybody there that's going to come and watch a soccer game. And that's the saddest part, because in those first couple of years, I went to Toronto FC games when I got the chance, when I was in the area, and those fans are unbelievable. Unbelievable passion. Unbelievable fans. It was awesome to be there. Every time I went, I was just awestruck at how great the fan base is in Toronto. And now to know that for the last few seasons, they can't even half fill that place, it's really sad. It's really sad, and it's even sadder that Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment can't find a way to turn that franchise into a winning franchise, a franchise that is the envy of Major League Soccer.
Right. I agree. They have all. It feels like they should have all the tools in place, but they certainly don't have them there. Two last questions on Toronto FC. First of all, does Jermaine Defoe stay at TFC or does he go away?
Well, I think he wants to leave.
Okay.
I mean, from what I'm hearing, he wants to leave. Harry Redknapp tried to bring him back during the transfer window, and they wouldn't let him go. I mean, there were reports that Toronto FC received the largest transfer offer in the history of Major League Soccer, what would have been the largest fee in the history of Major League Soccer, and they turned it down.
Right.
So I don't think that endears the player to you. If you know he wants to go and you're going to hold him there, I mean, I know it's a business, but you still have to get those players to play for you. And if he wants to go, you can't make a player that wants to go stay and play, because he's not going to do anything for your friend. He's only going to hurt you. So I think I'll be surprised if Jermaine Defoe ends up staying.
Does he play another game this season in a TFC jersey?
Well, I mean, you'd hope that he could. I mean, they were. I mean, I haven't checked the MLS table lately, but the last time I heard, there was still a chance.
Yeah, well,
in the Jim Carrey voice, you're saying there's a chance.
Well, that's my last question
but,
for TFC.
But that's the thing. I don't know whether he does or not. I don't know whether he wants to.
Right.
Let's put it to you that way.
Okay. They currently stand 3 points out of a playoff position. Philly and Columbus are both sitting on 36 points. The Red Bull on 34, and then they're on 33. Do they make the playoffs this year?
I think they need Jermaine Defoe to make the playoffs.
Okay. All right. I would actually agree with you 100%. He was, even though they were games behind, it seemed like every time he played, he made magic for them on the pitch. And I would agree with you 100%. If he doesn't come back and play another match in a TFC jersey, they don't get into the playoffs at all. They're currently losers of 4 of their last 6. So, that's you know what, that's really sad if they're that close. They're that close to a playoff spot that they can't find a way to come together to climb that mountain. That's really sad, and that actually says a lot about the state of that franchise. Right. So let me throw it over to Rob. I know Rob has one more question, and then we'll let you get back because I know you just got back, got home. So go ahead, Rob.
Yes, Jeremy. I just have one question to tell you. Who do you think gets top 6 in the Premier League, and who gets relegated?
Top 6 in the Premier League. Well, SirBob's going to love me for this one, but I think City's going to win. I think City will be up there. I think Liverpool could be there. I think Chelsea will come second. I just think at the end of the day, City just have that extra bit of class, but it's going to be a battle, I think, between Chelsea and City for the title. I would say probably Liverpool, Arsenal, Everton, maybe Tottenham are in there. Maybe.
I was going to say, did you say Chelsea? Did you say Chelsea? Did you mention Chelsea?
I did, second. I think Chelsea will finish second. I'm trying to get SirBob on my side here by saying City will win the Premier League.
I'll have you know that SirBob put in the chat that you are a great guest, and this is the best segment ever in his opinion. And he also followed that up.
Well, that's good to know.
He followed that up with a best guest ever, and I love this guy. So Yeah, I know my co-hosts are out of questions. I know a couple things that I wanted to mention to you quickly before we let you go was
Sure.
In the emails back and forth, you were kind of like, you really want to talk to me? Don't you want to talk to Ian or Ray or somebody like that? I got to say, I'm pleasantly surprised by the amount of passion that you show, especially for Man United. I think it's awesome. I don't think anyone could show that kind of passion. So I really, really appreciate you coming on. Of course, if you ever wanted to help us out, we did effort Ray Hudson and Ian Joy. So if you ever catch them in the hallway and say, "Hey, why don't you go talk to those guys for 5 minutes?" We wouldn't mind that at all. That's for sure.
I will certainly do that. You know what? I'm going for dinner with Ray next week. I will mention it to him.
Awesome.
Nice.
And I was going to say, I think that's the coolest thing ever, is to be able to go out to dinner with Ray Hudson. So, so on behalf of our guests in the chat room, who absolutely love you to death, and in fact, they would like you to come back during the hockey season so we could talk hockey for a few minutes.
I would absolutely love that. You know what? I'm going back to Canada next week. I'm going back to Canada to visit my family. I haven't been back since Christmas, so I'm very excited to go back. And while I am there, my Winnipeg Jets are going to be playing one of their preseason games. So I'm going to that. And for the hockey fans out there too, I want to remind them, if any of them have video game systems, that tomorrow is the launch of NHL 15. And that as an avid game player of the PS4 system myself, and an avid NHL player, that I'm more than willing to join any teams. If anybody's interested in having a plugger, NHL player, I'll come out and play.
Awesome, we appreciate that. So, again, Jeremy St. Louis, BeIN Sport. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll talk soon.
Guys, thanks very much for having me. I really appreciate it, and happy anniversary once again. Congrats.
Thanks for coming in.
So that was Jeremy St. Louis from BeIN Sport. Guys, I mean, what'd you think, man? That was
great guess.
Talk about passionate, man. He was completely on it. That was fantastic, and I really appreciated having him on. And again, he did actually post that to me in one of the emails that, why do you want to talk to me? And I'm like, are you kidding? Of course, of course we'd want to talk to you. So that, yeah, and that was even better than I expected. I mean, he seems like on the air, he seems like a fun guy. He seems like a fantastic person, but wow, I mean, I didn't expect that kind of passion out of him, and I thought it was fantastic. Yeah. So,
it's a good guess. Definitely be nice to get him back, and he seems to have a lot of information along with his opinions as well. It's not backed up with some data. And if you guys notice, he did the top six and he didn't mention Man United, so there's no bias there, which is hard to do. It is really hard to do.
That's right. I'm just doing a couple things here quickly. I just want to thank him for coming on. So, and sorry about the dead air. Really, what do we have left? We hit up our scores for the Euro 2016. We've got our MLS chat to talk about. And I know, I'm sure, Ben, you're probably on fumes. Do you want to save the transfer window top stuff for next week?
I don't mind doing it now if you just want to touch upon it. I think we did most of it last week, but there's only a couple that I think are talking points really. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let me give you guys the MLS chat for the week, and including my trip report to see the Red Bull play against Sporting KC. First, I'll hit it up with the scores starting on September 3rd. We had the Philadelphia Union 1-0 over a 10-man Toronto FC. We had New England Revolution 3-1 over Sporting KC. Chivas losers to Seattle Sounders 4-2. On Friday, the Galaxy put one on Colorado Rapids 6-0. Saturday, Philly with a 2-0 win over Toronto. The Red Bull, which is the game that I went to see, 2-1 over Sporting KC. Houston Dynamo 3-2 over the Montreal Impact. Real Salt Lake 2-1 over FC Dallas. And the Vancouver Whitecaps and DC United played to a 0-0 draw. On Sunday, Columbus Crew 3-0 over Chivas. Portland Timbers in a wild one coming back to tie the San Jose Earthquakes 3-3. And the last game of the week, the New England Revolution 2-1 over the Chicago Fire. I'll give you guys the standings quickly. In the Eastern Conference, DC United still leading the way on 47 points. Sporting KC, losers of 5 of their last 6 on 42 points in second place. The New England Revolution on fire, winners of 4 straight, 39 points. The Columbus Crew and the Philadelphia Union hold those final 2 playoff spots at 36 points each. The Red Bull just outside in 34 points. Toronto FC, as mentioned earlier, on 33 points. The Houston Dynamo on 31, Chicago Fire on 29, and the Montreal Impact leading up the bottom at 20 points. In the Western Conference, we have the Seattle Sounders, winners of 4 of their last 6 on 51 points, and currently leading the Supporter Shield race. The LA Galaxy in second place, winners of 5 in a row, 49 points. Real Salt Lake on 46 points. Welcome back Alvaro Saborio this week, who scored the game winner for Real Salt Lake on Saturday night. FC Dallas in 4th place on 42 points, and the Portland Timbers currently in 5th place on 35. Vancouver Whitecaps just outside the playoff zone on 34 points. The Colorado Rapids, losers of 6 straight, on 30 points. The San Jose Earthquakes on 27 points, and propping up the table, Chivas USA on 24 points. I want to mention that currently Bradley Wright Phillips is leading the way with 21 goals on the season, scoring his 21st in the match that I went to see this week. First off, before I say anything about the match, I want to thank Nelson Castro, who's a friend of the show, for getting me and my family those tickets. Fantastic seats. To start off, far be it from me to root for a Frenchman, but to see Thierry Henry's goal in the second half was just a complete moment of brilliance. From our seats, you could literally see the bend of the ball as he curled it into the far corner. Just a fantastic, fantastic shot. The other goal was scored by Bradley Wright Phillips on a penalty in the 11th minute. And the St. Louis goal was scored by Dominic Dwyer in the match. Dominic Dwyer, by the way, is second in the league on 18 goals so far this season. So seeing the top 2 goal scorers in the league both actually produce during the match was fantastic. Let me tell you a little bit about the Red Bull Arena in Harrison, New Jersey. Easy to get to and from. Fantastic venue, soccer-specific stadium. We were 9 rows from the pitch, right on the touchline, and you feel like you could just reach out and grab the players. It's a fantastic venue, great seats, great atmosphere. They have a supporters section, a lot of singing, a lot of drum beating. There was actually a section of fans that were supporters fans from St. Louis that came to, Kansas City, that came to the match as well. They were also quite loud, but just a great overall atmosphere and a great watch. Now, as far as the match goes, Kansas City really dominated this match, in my opinion. I did take a look at the stats afterwards, and Kansas City only held 51% of the possession, which really their possession ratio dropped off in the second half because they really dominated the first half. The key with the Red Bull is they were really able to use their speed, especially Bradley Wright Phillips. I didn't realize how fast he was on the pitch until you actually watched him live. His runs were more of an attacking nature. They were more positive, and they really led to chances, including the trip in the penalty box that led to the first goal for the match. So, this New York Red Bull team, if they can kind of get their ways straight, their defense looked a little suspect, but not horrible. It was kind of a bend but don't break mentality for them for the match. If we see them sneak their way in ahead of the Philadelphia Union or Columbus Crew, which it seems to me nobody wants to give up that spot, not even the Revolution. The Revolution have won 4 of their last 6, Columbus 3 of their last 6, Philadelphia Union 4 of their last 6, and the Red Bull 3 of their last 6. So no one really wants to give up these spots. The only team that's kind of falling back into the mix is actually Sporting KC, which are losers of 5 of 6. But I could see that the Red Bull kind of sneak in, possibly over the Crew or somebody like that, and maybe even do some damage in the playoffs once they get there. So that is kind of my quick MLS report for my trip report and for the league overall. Just want to go into next week's matches and see what's on the docket that would be of interest. Here we've got right off the bat on Friday we have Real Salt Lake, Colorado Rapids. Clearly a playoff match up in the making, which I think this is the one that Troy may be going to. The Portland Timbers versus the Vancouver Whitecaps. Oh no, I'm sorry, that match is in Portland, so it won't be that one. The Columbus Crew New England Revolution has playoff implications. The Red Bull Seattle Sounders, that's going to be in New York, is going to be a match of interest for both teams. LA Galaxy, FC Dallas are also going to be an interesting match as Dallas are fighting to stay alive in that playoff race. And Toronto, we'll see if they can get off the slide this week. They have a struggling Chivas coming north of the border. So, yeah, I see that question in the chat, Rob. We should have asked that, especially with tonight. But that'll do it for MLS for this week. Going to be some interesting games coming up on the weekend. One thing, Rob, that you put in the chat just now in the Skype chat was we should have asked them how it was to work with Christian Vieri and Ruud Gullit. And by the way, tonight he had Vieri and Ray Hudson on the show, so that would have been pretty neat. So why don't we take it over to our transfer window? One thing we wanted to talk about quickly with the transfer window, guys, is there was an article put out by Fox Sports, Summer Transfer Window Winners and Losers, and I really didn't care for this article and the fact that I thought it was a little it just didn't really give me a good taste in terms of winners and losers. This article listed, I believe it was Juventus as the number 2 loser, and this is a team that, remember, held on to Paul Pogba, held on to Arturo Vidal, which was rumored, both of them were rumored to be leaving like every single day. So it would kind of shock me that we're talking about them, as a loser when they were able to hang on to those pieces. So gentlemen, I figured we'd come up with a top 3 selections of our own for winners and losers in the window. Which one of you guys wants to go first? Because we didn't really get a chance to talk too much. Let's start with winners, guys. Why don't we do that? And give me some winners. Ben, I'll start with you because I know you've done some work on this. I mean, you both have, but Ben, let's talk to you first. Give me out of your list. Give me a winner.
I think for me that it's been an interesting transfer window for me, but I still think Barcelona's done quite well in this transfer window. I still don't think they've done enough, but I definitely think that they've improved as a team. They haven't really lost much for me. So I would say Barcelona is one of the winners. Not the top winner for me, but I would put them in my top 5 winners.
Yeah. Rob, how about you? I
would say Barcelona as well, but I think I'm going to give the top winner to Chelsea. They've really gotten the defenders that they need, the midfielder that they need, and obviously the striker in Diego Costa that they need. So I think for them, that should help them this season. And as I said previously, I really do see them winning the Premier League this season.
Okay. It's funny, guys, because my top winner that I had listed on my list was Chelsea. They had to add a proven striker, and they went out and did that in Diego Costa. They also improved their goaltending, which is kind of hard to believe when you think about it. They're dealing with a guy like Peter Cech and they go and improve their situation. They increased the quality of their defense by adding Felipe Luis. And keep in mind, gentlemen, they only net spending £7.8 million on this transfer window. So after all they sold, obviously that helped with selling David Luiz, but all they sold and all they spent, they only ended up spending $7.8 million out of pocket, which I think is amazing for the amount of quality and depth that they added to their team moving forward. And I think that's one of the reasons, we're considering them the favorites to win the EPL. It's funny you guys mentioned Barcelona as well. I had them second on my list. And we're looking at them, one of the things they did was they unloaded Alex Song, who tended to be a little bit of a headache. They did make a couple of moves to improve their defense, including Jeremy Mathieu and Thomas Vermaelen, like we had talked about earlier. But the key additions of Claudio Bravo to replace Victor Valdez, the addition of Ivan Rakitic from Sevilla, and obviously, like we had talked about earlier, the addition of Luis Suarez is just, you can't say enough about how they made their overall improvements on this team to strengthen themselves, especially going into the ban. These are all players, maybe Mathieu is not quite as young as you'd like him to be, but in general, these guys are young enough that there's a lot of quality out there, and I think we're gonna see, I think they've done good things that'll hold them through this transfer ban. Personally, guys, as my third choice that I added, and as far as winners in the transfer window, and actually Tre Atkinson earlier pointed this team out, was Bayern Munich. Okay, these guys lost Mario Mandzukic and Toni Kroos, but they replaced Mandzukic with Robert Lewandowski, which to me is an upgrade. They bring in Xavi Alonso, which I don't think is an upgrade, but they also bring in Bernat in the midfield. And they bring in probably the quality or the top quality defender that was available out there in Benatia from Roma. They also add a backup goaltender in Pepe Reina. So I think Munich really did a ton of great work in this, guys. Did you guys have any others that you wanted to add to the winners list?
Man United for me.
Okay.
I know that a lot of money was spent, but I think it needed to be really. There was no hiding away from the fact that they needed a lot of players, and I think getting Falcao, whether it's the option to actually buying, will be awesome if he can, but I think he'll bag some goals this season for me. One of the best finishers around. Obviously, Di Maria, Danny Blinds, good season. Marcus Rojo, and Luke Shaw as well. I mean, I think they probably needed one more centre back, but I think they went at least some of the way to filling in the gaps that need to be filled in. And they managed to get players. Like I said in one of the shows before the season started, I think Man United had two more windows, which was the one that's just been closed, and the January window where their name is still going to account for a lot, regardless of where they finish. Mm-hmm. And I think they needed to do a lot of business there, and I think that's what you've seen, because I think if they finish outside the Champions League again this year, not only will they lose a lot of sponsorship deals, as SirBob's mentioned, but actually, 2 years outside the Champions League, people start to not think of you as highly. So I think that they did good work, and they did it when it needed to be done.
Mm-hmm. Rob, how about you? Anybody else you want to add to this list?
No, I'm going to agree with Ben and also say Manchester United.
Mm-hmm. Okay. The other two that I wanted to add as honorable mentions. First of all, I talked about Juventus. I went back and looked at their transfer window, what they did over the transfer window. Obviously, losing Antonio Conte is a big issue, but I don't take that as a transfer window issue. You can't really take head coaching as part of your transfers do's and don'ts. You know what I mean? Or else we'd all be adding Antonio Contes and Louis van Gaals and Gus Hiddink and all those likes and Jose Mourinho's. We would be after those guys instead of Radamel Falcao's and James Rodriguez. So I looked at Juve's transfer window, and they brought in Morata from Real Madrid. They brought in Romelu. They brought in Patrice Evra. They brought in Coman from PSG, who they're talking about right now in Italy as being the steal of the entire transfer window. They were able to hang on to Paul Pogba and Vidal, like I pointed out earlier. And the only real loss is they sold this kid Zaza, who went over. I forget where he went to now, but he just highlighted in the Italian national team and scored a goal. So, that's probably the greatest loss that they suffered aside from Conte. So I think they actually had a very good transfer window, to the point where, I'm not calling them in my top three, but certainly above average in terms of the quality they brought in. The other team that I want to mention just quickly, guys, is Borussia Dortmund. Bringing in Shinji Kagawa back from Man United, who really was kind of lost at United, and I wonder if that was more of a function of just the turmoil that was going on over there. He never seemed to fit in there. Went back to Dortmund, where he was successful. Matthias Ginter, Ciro Immobile, who they brought in to replace Robert Lewandowski. They brought in Adrian Ramos as well, and Nuri Sahin from Real Madrid. So they brought in some quality in the midfield, and So it's certainly, done well. The only loss that they had was Robert Lewandowski, and they were able to hang on to Marco Reus during the transfer window. So for me, they've done a great job as well. And just to let SirBob know, I am logged into the chat, so I didn't see what he had posted up there earlier. Aside from Tre Atkinson ain't got nothing on Jeremy St. Louis and about Juventus finishing third or fourth, but that's my opinion of the winners, guys. Anybody else that you want to kind of throw in there as an honorable mention? Rob or Ben, either way.
I think you mentioned most of them. I mean, yeah. I think in fairness, a lot of the movements have gone back and forth for the other teams. There's been a few in, few out. So they would be for me the ones that have done the most and the best in the window.
Yeah. How about you, Rob? Anybody else that you might want to throw in that mess?
I guess I want to mention us. I think we should all mention Arsenal.
Okay.
If I may.
As a winner.
I guess considering with the transfer of Chambers, Alexis Sanchez, even if you want to consider Welbeck a good transfer, but other than that, no, I got nothing else.
Okay, yeah, that's I would agree with that as well. I think the Welbeck addition is a good addition for them. I think Welbeck was kind of lost in the Man United shuffle. Also, bringing in Falcao and Di Maria makes him expendable. So I think, and I don't have a copy of the Serie A table, and Troy, if you made a comment about the Cowboys, I really don't want to see it today. But I agree that I think the Welbeck addition is a good addition for them. Alexis Sanchez is gonna do wonders for them. He's a fantastic player. So I would agree with adding Arsenal to that list of winners. Rob, while I got you there, give me a big old loser in the transfer window. Give me somebody that you think's a big loser.
I want to say Manchester City.
City is a loser. Okay, tell me why.
I think they haven't really. I guess they haven't really spent much this season. Considering the way, I don't think they don't need to spend as much.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm trying to remember, I think like the one key player that they have signed is what the hell? Mangala.
Oh,
that's about it.
Yeah, Mangala they brought in for the defense. So that was.
I think that's the only big transfer that would be good.
Okay.
Otherwise, Willy Caballero and Bakary Sagna, Fernando, obviously. Mm-hmm. It's not. I don't think it's nothing huge for Manchester City. Obviously, look at this depth that this Manchester City squad has, and it's. I don't see it needing any changes. Maybe someone at left back.
Sure. Considering
Kolarov might not do much, but I think if he's good enough, I think Kolarov will have a good season. But other than that, yeah, I think it's fine.
Yeah. How about you, Ben? Anybody you want to put in here as a loser?
I agree with Troy, actually. I think you've got to say Southampton. I think Lallana and Lovren leaving, Shaw leaving. These are good young players that, unfortunately, if you're not a big club in the Premier League, they don't tend to stay because it's just so hard to break into Europe in England.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have Southampton on my list. Losing Luke Shaw, Adam Lallana, Lovren, Chambers, and Lambert. They only bring in Shane Long and Toby Alderweireld. They saved £35 million in the transfer window, or they went plus $35 million, but lost a lot of experience. Many of the players that they had brought in to replace didn't have Premier League experience, according to the articles I've seen out there. So I would agree with that. I think we're missing the biggest one, guys. What about Monaco?
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, you're right.
Monaco's a huge loser in this one. Falcao, James Rodriguez. They lost Emmanuel Riviere. They lost Obadi, and they didn't add anybody. There were no additions to the Monaco locker room. So I can imagine why Radamel Falcao was like, you know what? Somebody pay $5. I'll leave. Just pay for my plane ticket. But Monaco. This is a team that last year we were talking about challenging PSG for the title. And here we're wondering if they're going to challenge for that relegation zone after getting rid of all their quality. So, one of the ones that I brought up, guys, and I think it's a controversial choice for loser in the transfer window. Real Madrid.
In a way, I guess.
I'll explain. I can explain.
Okay, go for it.
They obviously the big signing for them this year was James Rodriguez. I think everyone is pretty much in agreement with that. James Rodriguez was signed based on the 6 games or the 5 games he played in Brazil this summer, because the talk about him in Monaco was that he never got along with Claudio Ranieri. He was he took practices off. He wouldn't train with the team. He wasn't a team player. Now he goes over to Real Madrid in a clogged midfield with Bale and Ronaldo and Modric and all these other guys. And what does Real Madrid do to alleviate the pressure in the midfield? They get rid of Di Maria, which I think is when you really look at it from that perspective, if I asked you guys right now, who would you rather have, James Rodriguez or Angel Di Maria? Rob, let me ask you first. Rodriguez or Di Maria? Who do you want right now?
Oh, that's for me. I think that's a rhetorical question. Di Maria.
Yeah. Okay, Ben. How about you?
Yeah, I would take Di Maria. I think Rodriguez hasn't proved himself over a long enough period of time for them.
Yeah. So I mean, that was my point. Now obviously you've got to factor in the Toni Kroos part of this as well, because obviously adding a quality midfielder like Toni Kroos goes a long way. But then they lose the heart of their midfield in Xavi Alonso. I understand, like Trey had said earlier, he's getting a little older, but still I would think Xavi Alonso has 2 or 3 quality years left in him, no doubt. They lose Morata to Juventus. They lose Diego Lopez. And the other big addition that they had on their list, Javier Hernandez, Chicharito. I mean, good Lord. Chicharito wasn't good at Man United because he's not good. Even many of the people in the Mexican Federation will say that they've got better talent there than Chicharito. But this is the guy that they kind of brought in. I just don't see it. I don't think they spent their money wisely. They spent money and they got quality players, but I don't think they built the quality where they needed to build it. So
sorry to interrupt you, Joe, just to touch upon Javier Hernandez deal. This is one that I really don't understand from either team, from either view. I mean, I don't understand what Javier Hernandez has got to gain from this. It just feels to me like he's moving from one bench to another as well.
Right.
But yeah, he's not strong enough for me to play at any kind of top level.
Right. The only thing
I just don't think he is.
The only person happy about the Javier Hernandez move is Javier Hernandez, because even though he's going to ride the bench, he was going to ride the bench in both places. He probably has more of an opportunity to actually see the pitch with Real Madrid, just because of all the other competitions they're in. You've got Champions League, you've got Copa del Rey, you've got La Liga, you've got all these other things that they're playing for, and they're going to go deep. This is not a team that is going to just bow out in the group stages of the Champions League. You're not going to see it. So he's going to get time on the pitch. He's going to get probably more time on the pitch than he would have gotten in Man United, just because of the amount of games. So that was one that I brought up as quote unquote controversial. The other one that I want to throw at you guys quickly as a loser, and this is kind of an honorable mention. I don't think these guys were quite that big of a loser in the transfer window. Atletico Madrid. And the reason I said that is because losing the likes of Costa, they lost Felipe Luis, but Thibaut Courtois is probably the biggest lose for them. They brought on Jan Oblak from Porto to replace him, but let's be honest, how many goalies in the world could replace Thibaut Courtois right now? Neuer, Joe Hart, SirBob. Guys like that, but they're losing Toby Alderweireld. They lose Courtois. They lose 2 guys on defense with Alderweireld and Felipe Luis. Now they did things to improve their attack. I think they recovered nicely, not quite up to the quality, pretty close though, in bringing in Cherchi, Griezmann, and Mandzukic. But really, where they're going to lose is on their back line and then their goaltending. I think they're going to suffer big time over the season this year, guys. What are your thoughts on Atletico Madrid? Ben, I'll go with you first. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think they're a loser in the window for me. I think 2 out of the 3 stand-out players for me last season, basically the 3 that made the difference for Atletico Madrid for me was Courtois, Costa, and Koke, and they've lost 2/3 of that. So I definitely think that they were losers in the window. Yeah, I just think there was 5 worse for me.
Yeah. Rob, how about you?
I think I can also agree with Ben as well. Despite getting the transfer of Griezmann and Mandzukic, you think they're going to be a good replacement for? Are you going to think that Mandzukic is going to be a good replacement for Diego Costa? And where in the world are you going to find a great goalkeeper that has the same ability as Courtois? So in a way, yeah, I do think they were a loser in this transfer window.
Yeah. So any other losers that you guys might want to throw in there, Rob? Do you have any other losers that you want to send into this before we bring it over to the Blackburn and ManCity corners?
No, I have nothing.
No, how about you, Ben?
No, I don't have any more losers, but I do have one transfer before we it is a Man City transfer, but we've got another one for the corner anyway. But yeah, there was one transfer I did want to talk about, one that kind of went a little bit under the radar, and I think that's because he's been injured for a while. But I'll let you guys take it first, and I'll give you my opinion. But one that I saw that I thought was quite interesting was Micah Richards to Fiorentina. Obviously, you know, he's had tons and tons of injuries, Joe, and he's been pushed down. What was Zabaleta and obviously Sanya coming in, but I can't remember the exact price, but it was quite cheap. Joe, what do you think of Micah Richards?
Well, I think this is a good move for both City and for Micah Richards. Obviously, you know, City brought in Mangala to shore up that back line, which I think is good. They were getting better play out of Di Michaelis. They have Vincent Kompany already, so you know. It wasn't an area that they really needed to work on, but at the same time, like you said, Micah Richards coming off of injuries, you know, he didn't get to see much time on the pitch at Man City. He's going to go to an Inter side now where he's going to get some playing time. He's also going to go to a league that runs, you know, that plays a little slower. You know, we talk about the style of play of these different leagues. Italy and Germany tend to play a little slower and a little more tactical than let's say Spain or England. So I think that's gonna play to his strengths while he is, you know, obviously nursing himself back to full strength and full quality. So I think it's a good move on all sides. You know, and Inter could use the benefit of getting that extra defender. They're going into the Europa League, so they're going to need to build that depth. And I think this is a good spot for him to do that in as well. Rob, what do you think about this?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I definitely agree.
Yeah, so
so I'll just I think for me, Micah Richards has been a bit unlucky really in his career. I mean, I know SirBob's saying he's going to wish him all the best. He could have been a good servant, and you know, I mean, we were looking at Micah Richards 2-3 seasons ago, thinking, you know, this guy's going to play for England every week. You know, he can play centre back, he can play full back. He was strong. He's a good tackler. He's very good in the air. I think it's a good signing. It's Fiorentina, I believe, he's gone to. But regardless, I do think Serie A does play a bit slower, like you said, and I do think he needs to go somewhere where he can rebuild his career. And I don't know. I kind of prefer him in the middle. I'm not sure if that's where he wants to play, but I just think that his game suits playing in the centre a little bit more. And I just think that he played right back because he wanted to play at Man City. And then obviously he couldn't come into the centre. But I think if he goes and really puts his name down, you've got to remember that he's still only 24.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, you know,
26.
26, sorry. He's still, you know, this is not even really peak for me. I mean, you know, nowadays, especially centre backs that tend to play on, you know, later if you've got a good footballing brain and if you're good in the air, then, you know, you can play into your 30s. So still got a lot of years left in him, and, you know. So he can go to Fiorentina, have a couple of good seasons, and I could definitely see him coming back to play European football in his career.
Yeah, and you know, it's going to be good for Fiorentina. I'm sorry about that. I meant to say Fiorentina as well. It's going to be good for them, obviously, with the bad news that they got this week about another often injured player in Giuseppe Rossi, who had to have knee surgery again this week and is out for 4 months. So, you know, certainly hope the injury bug doesn't bite Fiorentina the way it has. That's for sure. So
yeah.
So that'll close it out for our transfer window coverage. You know, thankfully we won't be talking about the silly season for a few weeks, but I'm sure we'll get back into it with all the winter rumors that normally prop up. Probably in about 3 or 4 hours, Ben.
Yeah, I mean they're probably working on them now just to give us more work for next week. So yeah, I'm sure
exactly
we'll have some extra work, and you know. There's always something for us to talk about, and usually there's always a rumour for us to talk about, so I don't suppose that's going to change.
Yeah. You know, one other thing I just want to add quickly is Jeremy St. Louis just posted this on Twitter 21 seconds ago of a picture of Karim Benzema, okay? The great thing about it, he's wearing a Winnipeg Jets hat. Talk about timing, you know, in terms of the show and what we talked about tonight and having him on. that is absolutely perfect timing. So there you go. Ben, Blackburn Corner, man. What's going on in with the Blackburn Rovers this week?
Obviously we didn't have any games this week. We actually had a couple of players on international duty. We had Grant Andy playing centre back, and I think we had a couple of players in the under 21s as well. But Jordan Rose is still not getting a chance for Scotland, which is a bit beyond me really. But yeah, as far as what's going on off the field, really a little bit in the end of the window. They brought in Shane Duffy from Everton, who hadn't quite broke into the first team at Everton, but he's a big lad, looks quite strong and good in the air, and it's going to provide good competition and definitely cover if not. And Ryan Tunnicliffe, who actually came through the Man United youth system, who's a Fulham player at the moment, but he's come on loan and box-to-box player. He's going to provide cover. A guy with potential, and if he does well, hopefully we can get him on a long-term contract. But yeah, they just brought in a few players really and built the squad up, which is what we need to do really, because it's a long old season in the Championship, 46 games. So hopefully that'll improve us enough that we can take a shot at the top six, and hopefully I can have some good stories to talk about in the Blackburn Corner come the end of the season.
Certainly. So let's close out the Blackburn Corner for this week. Let's take it over to the highly anticipated final segment of this 1-year anniversary show, and that is SirBob's ManCity Corner. So this week wanted to talk about something we didn't talk about last week or over this transfer window, so I guess we're going to talk about one more transfer thing, and that is the transfer of Alvaro Negredo to Valencia on loan with a €30 million obligation to buy. For me, for one, I'm kind of sad to see Negredo go. I thought he was a fantastic addition for ManCity. Really started the season on fire last year and was unfortunate to suffer a knock. I think it was probably January, guys, is when he suffered that knock. He sat out sometimes. He never got right again, but I was looking forward to seeing him come back on the pitch and really playing strong. Obviously with Edin Dzeko and Stefan Jovetic in place there, and Jovetic really playing much, much better than he did last year. Seeing, Negredo was going to see less and less time on the pitch, so I think this is a good move for Negredo. Also a good move for City in general. Rob, let me start with you. What are your thoughts on the Negredo transfer?
Well, for me, I think this transfer was I don't want to say it's given. They basically, Manchester City have given this guy a year, and he hasn't been at the expectations that he supposedly should have been. Okay, you have 4 strikers at Manchester City: Dzeko, Aguero, Jovic, and him. So, in a way, it was going to be hard for him anyway to compete with those strikers. But to see him go only after 1 season at Manchester City, it's just ridiculous, in my perspective.
Ben, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Rob. I do think, I know SirBob was talking a lot about Jovetic last season, saying that, we wasn't talking about him enough, wasn't given enough credit, and I think, he's showing this year that he can play. But one thing that I would take from Negredo that you maybe don't get from the players on the pitch at the moment is Negredo's, for me, he's the strongest forward they have. And it just gives you a bit of a different option, and sometimes you get those games where you need something changed, you need to play a little bit different. And I just think that Negredo, he's got that kind of target man image, strong, decent finisher. I just think it gave him a little bit of a different feel. And for me, it's always going to be tough. This is the thing when you're in a part of a big team and you've got 4 strikers and you're trying to rotate, or you're trying to keep the players a cover for different tournaments to keep everybody happy when they're not all playing, especially when you've got 4 players for 2 spots. It is always going to be tough, and I wouldn't be surprised if they did want to keep him, and he said, look, I'm not going to play full fiddle, third fiddle, you know what I mean. So for me, I can understand why he went, but at the same time, I mean, $30 million or so, like just under £20 million, like £18 million, that is that's cheap for me. I mean, I know it was only one season we really got to see him, which I don't think was long enough, especially with the injury, like what Rob said. But if you really think about what you can get for £18 million nowadays, Negredo, from what I've seen of him, is worth more than £18 million. And I think if they've got that clause and he has a good season at Valencia, what a good option to buy that is. I mean, yeah, that's really good value for money for me.
I agree. Yeah, think about it. Even at that price, he's just slightly more money than Mario Balotelli, which for me, and I'm sure SirBob might disagree with me, but I think Balotelli's a better striker than Alvaro Negredo. Although taking nothing away from Alvaro Negredo, we all know how much I like him as a striker. But yeah, I thought Balotelli was a steal. I don't think Negredo is as much of a steal at £18 million, but I certainly think he is a steal at that point. So Valencia might be wise to go ahead and snap him up while they have the quote unquote obligation to do it. As long as he can remain healthy, I think they should certainly take the chance on him. So, that'll definitely, it'll be a nice improvement for the Valencia side as well once he comes back from injury. So, let's cue the closing music, boys. And I got to tell you guys, what a show tonight. First of all, special thanks to Tre Atkinson from Bleacher Report, and special thanks to Jeremy St. Louis from BeIN Sports, really making this show, this 1-year anniversary show, a pleasure to do. Before we run out, Rob, do you have any closing thoughts?
No, I guess great show today with both the guests that we have, in Jeremy and Tre, and I hope in the future that we can get more guests, which in fact I'm doing right now.
I just saw that, so we'll make mention of that real quick. So if you guys want to shoot at or tweet at him, Sam Kelly is somebody we're certainly targeting. He's an Argentine football writer, so certainly would be awesome to have. So if you guys want to do a little Twitter stalking, that's perfectly fine by us. Ben, do you have any closing thoughts for tonight?
Once again, just kind of reiterating what Rob just said. Jeremy and Tre were great guests. We're looking at other guests as well. For anyone listening in the chat, we're trying to get some English footballers that are playing now. Obviously, we're trying to start low, but we're going to try and get some possibly some League 2, some League 1 players, and maybe see if we can work our way up and get some current footballers on the show, so we can mix it up a bit and get some guests for you guys in the chat to talk to about what it's like to be a professional footballer. So,
yep, and thanks as usual to our usual and customary in the chat. Troy and SirBob. You guys have made this first year great, and we're glad you keep sticking with us. I guess we're doing something right because you guys keep coming back for more. Programming note: as far as I know, we will be having Low Limit Poker Radio on Thursday night at 9:00. I know John had some Skype issues that we worked out, so just wanted to mention that. So for episode 41, the anniversary episode of Low Limit Football, I am Joe Usello.
And I'm Ben the Machine.
And I'm Roberto Rojas.
Thanks for joining us. We'll be back next Monday. Thank you again, and good night.
Thank you for listening for 1 year to us.